and welcome to episode 107 of The Imperial Truth. I'm Greg. Joining me, as usual, is Neil.
Hello, Greg.
How you doing, man?
Not bad. More importantly, how are you?
I'm on the mend, I think is the term. First off, thank you for well wishes and everything people sent through. Just to kind of fill in and people have asked. I was on holiday, on honeymoon, in fact, in America, and between Walt Disney World and New York, got ill and thought I was getting better. Turned out a few days after I got back that I was not getting any better at all, and my gallbladder had decided to get seriously infected to the point I was being treated for sepsis. So it was a little bit touch and go. I was up until the Wednesday afternoon, I was determined I was going to the Weekender. Nothing was stopping me getting to the Weekender. Wednesday evening, I'd already made the phone calls and was on the way to hospital. So, we talk a little bit about that. But I'm past all the danger and everything else. No need to worry. It's just a bit of a slow recovery. Lost. I was trying to work it out. Lost over 2.5 stone, I think, over a period of time. So, or certainly over 2 stone. So, it's been fun. But the wife is a wonderful person, and we're getting there. So, well, this episode might have been out a bit earlier because I've been ready to record, but as usual, nothing comes in singular, does it? So we had some computer problems, which turned out to be completely minor, but we're back to record. So again, just wanted to put that out there, and a thanks for all those who asked. But that's me done. Could be a lot worse, and my heart goes out to all the people out there who are struggling with stuff, because none of it's fun, especially hospital wards, even with the Weekender. So yes, all good. But before we go any further, let's get back onto gaming, and let's mention Element Games. They've got, recently we've had the Buried Dagger released, or up for pre-release, and there's some other bits and pieces as well. Remember, you can get your Black Library books from Element, and you do get that 20% off in pre-order period as well. So I think it's still cheaper than ordering. Even if you just order the book, it's like a few pence cheaper than ordering from Black Library, and you can pick up other stuff as well. And it's £80 for free delivery, so it doesn't take much to chuck on a couple of squads of whatever you need, and you're at £80.
Especially with all the other stuff that comes out, and then you think, I fancy one of those boxes, or a bit of this, or a bit of that. Yeah,
absolutely. And with the custodies changing, maybe people might be looking at jumping on them with some hopefully more pleasant rules. We'll get onto that later as well. But yeah, Element Games, absolutely brilliant. In fact, I've had not being able to get out of the house, I've had cause to use them over the last couple of weeks to try and get some hobby done. So I actually should do some hobby, seeing as I've done that. But that's the always the state of things, isn't it? But hey ho. Yes. But anyway, moving on. Why don't we jump into what we've been up to? So I've not been up to a lot, but have you been painting, Neil? We've now got a date for Warhammer Fest.
Yeah, I've been painting away. I had plans on getting more stuff done by certain deadlines, and stuff has slipped. I've just been working on the my entry that I'm going to take to Crystal Brush, which will then also go into Warhammer Fest. Apart from that, not a great deal. I've got a couple of things that I want to get done, and I'm in the phase of where I'm coming near to the end of a project. I'm starting to think about all the ideas of what I could maybe do for the next project or the project after that. So it's all that sort of looking at models and thinking, I could do this, or I could paint that, and this could be quite cool. And so that's always a fun period when you start thinking of usually expensive period as well, because you end up buying kits for that would be a fantastic project. You buy it and then go, actually no, I've decided that I won't bother doing that, and you end up canning it. Hence why I have so many boxes around me with half-used sprues and bits and pieces. But yeah, so not a huge amount. I've recently, with my entry to Crystal Brush, I got some brass etch done. We spoke about this.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
ages ago. So I was trying to decide how I would do the top part of the bridge on the entry, because obviously I've sculpted everything else, but the top of the bridge was just flat. And I thought I knew that if I just put a model straight on that, it would look odd, that there was no texture on there. And of course, it being an Eldar sort of bridge, it had to have something, and it couldn't just be sand. It couldn't be checker plate because it would all look wrong. Yeah. So I started playing around with some designs and some patterns that I could print. And I ended up coming up with an idea of effectively lots of lines sort of going in the bridge direction, but starting off thick and going into thin. Mm-hmm. So I got onto Illustrator and spent ages knocking up loads of sort of different designs and ways of working it, and then bit the bullet last week and thought, right, I need to get this ordered now. So I sent my order off to PPD, and I must admit, I sent them an email initially with a file and said, can you just check the file, make sure it's all formatted correctly, etc. Yeah. And they said, yeah, everything's absolutely fine. And I said, look, can you, they said, are you working to a particular deadline? So I thought, well, I won't tell them when, but I said, could you do it by the end of February? And they didn't respond back. And they then sent me the quotes, and I paid for it quite relatively promptly. And I thought, blimey, so I paid for it on Thursday night at like 9 o'clock at night. And it was in my hands Saturday morning.
That's not bad, is it?
So I was like, that's not bad going. So they literally obviously took that payment, processed it on Friday and sent it out special delivery, and it arrived in my hands on Saturday morning. So I was like, wow, that was, you couldn't ask for a better turnaround time.
No, absolutely.
So, yeah, please I've got that bit out of the way because it was sort of bugging me how I was going to solve the problem on the bridge. Yeah. So having that done now, that's another tick in the box to say, right, yeah, that's done. And hopefully just enable me just to get all that knocked out and finished in time, really.
So you didn't enter anything in any of the Heresy Weekender competitions?
No chance, no.
Okay, did you go and have a look?
I had a look. I think I sent you a photo saying when will they learn, and it had the Youngbloods category with all the Youngbloods trophies in an empty cabinet, as it was the whole weekend, because there was not a single young person there as previous years. And I just thought to myself, what? Surely they've worked this out from last time that there are no Youngblood categories.
They don't bother. What's the point in making a new document? Just print off the same document. This is what we need.
But the thing that got me was the trophies were printed with the Horus Heresy and Necromunda Weekender Youngbloods category, gold, silver, bronze. So it wasn't as even though they were just generic trophies that they just put in a cabinet and went, oh, they haven't been used, that's fine, we'll just take them down and reuse them on the next one. I was like, they've been printed for this event. So they've clearly not had too much thought process going into it. But one of my, because I queued up there on the weekend, and I was talking to someone who was entering, because they said a lot of people came up to me and said, "Oh, are you entering the painting competition?" I went, "No, I'm not." It's a lot of effort for me to get my Golden Demon entries done, let alone then worry about community painting competitions. So, but there are a few people who are entering, and apparently they didn't actually release the categories and the rules for the competition until the Saturday of the Weekender, where they put out a printed A4 sheet on the tables for everyone to look at. So you pretty much had to just pick up stuff, take it, and hope that it fitted into a category. So people didn't know there was a Youngbloods category. People didn't know there was all the categories available. You just had to bring something and hope it worked. So it was a little bit disorganised on that front.
Yeah, we will talk some more about that, and we talk a lot about that with Michael later in the episode as well. And it looks like there might be reasons for that, but hey ho. Moving on, shall we say? So I've not done a lot heresy wise. I think it's fair to say we'll move swiftly on from my hobby progress. Although doing some reading, the event only anthology. It's quite interesting. We talk about it, Michael, so I won't repeat any of that, but have managed to just about get my brain in gear to do some reading, which is good. But they have released some stuff over the weekend afterwards. Excuse me, my voice is struggling a little bit. You will realise, and there's a little bit of a click on the line sometimes, so I do apologise for that. But we had the Space Wolf Death Swarm released at the Weekender.
Yes.
And now available.
Yep.
What do you think of them?
Yeah. Those, I must admit, when we spoke, I think it was on the last episode, we talked about some of the new models that were coming out and how they've been designed, and people sort of people not really saying if they liked or disliked them, and some people said they didn't like the new models and the sculptures, etc., etc. Everything I saw the weekend, I must admit, I thought was first class sculpts, and I thought everything looked so much better in the flesh, as always. And those they look great. Those Space Wolf guys, they look absolutely brilliant. And also, remember some of the stuff we'd seen previously. Seeing that in the flesh and seeing the renders of that, they were amazing. And one of the sculptors, the new sculptors, a guy called Neil Roberts. Obviously, not the other Neil Roberts. Yeah. This is a new Neil Roberts. His stuff is brilliant. He did the Praetors for the
Night Lords.
Night Lords,
yeah,
and then he did some other bits and pieces. And I tell you what, when you see his, because he's obviously all done on the computer, and he had some big printouts of them, and you looked at the detail he's put into them, and the pose that he had designed them in, not the way that they had been built and painted, they were absolutely first class. And he's done all the new White Scars, and I tell you what, he is a fabulous sculptor. He really, really is, and a really nice guy as well. When you speak to him,
is this a guy you said was as mad as a box of frogs?
Completely insane.
So
yes.
Perfect.
If you walked up to him and speak to him, you couldn't get away. He would just start talking to you about all sorts of random subjects, and you sort of almost started doing that backing up walk of like, okay, yeah, I've got to go and someone's calling me, I've got to go by, and you had to literally walk off because he would not stop talking to you.
That enthusiasm is brilliant.
Completely enthusiastic. He was, but that sort of almost makes it quite nice because his stuff was tip top, and he just wanted to talk to everyone, no matter who you were. He wanted
That's really good.
Talk to you. He was talking to us about bases that he's made and how he's made his base and how he's cast these bases and he's put resin water. He was talking about it, and after about 5 minutes, I was like, I've got to go. This guy just won't stop talking about these bases and these. It almost felt like the opposite that you imagine the scenario usually is, where the weird geek comes up to them and won't stop talking at them.
I'm sure
it was like role reversal.
If it's a subject you're into, though, that is great. If someone's there, that's the wealth of information being given out, which is awesome, which is really cool. Yeah, and I like the Deathspawn. I might have to put a rock under the guy at the back who's he's either trying to unstick his legs or he's doing a bit of a dance. But apart from that, they look really cool. And Haval, the Red Blade, as well. You got to see him.
And I tell you what, again, that's another one where he looks so much better when you saw him in resin than, say, the official photo with the paint job.
Yeah,
because there's so much detail lost in that paint job. It's really hard to realise when you see the resin version. You're like, wow, actually, this is. I actually thought when I saw the blown up resin photo. When they had that on the stand, I thought that was a new model.
Right.
At one stand, I went, "Oh, this is new. I haven't seen this before." And then it was like, "Hold on, no, that axe is that axe from that other guy." And then when I looked at it, "Oh no, it's the same model." But you don't initially spot that when you sort of because it is so much much more detail in there than you can see.
Yeah, sure. And it's good to get them out nice and. Deathspawn were a bit of a surprise, which is really cool. We got the Night Lord's Praetors and the Leviathan. You said the Leviathan as well was another one where,
the Leviathan was another one where I'm still not like a massive fan of the Leviathan, but I can see why it maybe is a bit tricky to do the Leviathan. But there's also some key points on that, like the body that's on that Leviathan.
Yeah,
that's obviously a separate piece. That body.
Yeah.
So you don't have to put that on, and it is designed that it has just a little locating thing that you can just take off.
Okay.
So it has got that flexibility. Whereas if you bought two of them, you could have one with, one without, or if you have one and you don't like it, very easy to sort of take that detail off and just leave it off.
Yeah.
So again, it's one of those ones where it's relatively easy not to
get around
sort of get bogged down in that. Oh well, I don't like that detail because again, it's all separate.
Yeah, absolutely, that's brilliant. And we got some Night Lords dice, which is a
we did. I bought those dice.
They look cool. To be fair, I'm quite tempted to get some myself.
Yes. As soon as I saw them, I was like, right, I'm having these, knowing how the dice have fared in previous times. As soon as I saw them, I went, I'm having a set of those.
That's the hope, isn't it? The hope is they've released dice because they found a sustainable way to release dice.
Yes.
you would hope. And it's not just a one-off, see how many we sell. We got this many, see how long they last. We would hope that they are sustainable and therefore we might get the others back in because they still go for silly money on eBay. in groups.
Yeah.
People want to roll the dice for their Legion, and also people go to dice companies to get their own made up, and they're never quite as good, are they?
No, these are really nice, brilliant. As soon as I saw them, I picked a set up, and I picked up the Praetor, the Night Lord's Terminator Praetor, because again, like I said, absolutely beautiful model. Really, really is tip top.
Yeah, that's cool. That is absolutely a way to do it. Right, at the Weekender itself, so we got to talk about the big guy, haven't we? Sanguinius.
Okay, well, if we have to, yes.
Yeah, he's all right, isn't he? This is I heard someone talking about it. I can't remember who, and I can't remember if it was a private group chat or somewhere else. But they basically said the photographer had a bit of trouble trying to find an angle which showed it off well. Because it's at the end of the day, the problem is we got 3D models, and they're designed to be appreciated in 3 dimensions.
And it was painted in non-metallics, which can be awkward to photograph.
Yeah, because again, if you get
certain angle, you can put it in the wrong angle. The non-metallics can look wrong, and you can photograph it. And someone could say, "Well, why has he done the non-metallic?" They call it the golden angle, don't they? So if you get that quite right with the non-metallics, or the non-metallics are done in a set way, then it can throw it off.
Yeah, it feeds into
when you try and photograph it.
Yeah, but with spear and sword, I love him. I think he's amazing.
Yes, fabulous model. Again, I was very unsold when I first saw the first shots of him go up, and then seeing him in the flesh, as it were, was great. And obviously speaking, I forgot the name of the painter. What's his name? Bora.
Yeah.
He was. I spoke to him obviously quite in depth about how he did it and what he was looking to do and how it all worked. And absolutely fabulous piece. Really, really is a tip top one. And also, I quite like the display base as well. I know that there was a lot of controversy over that, like whether it would be obviously the big bloodthirster on the base.
It's never going to be Angrath on what's his name? Sorry, on a base. Like he's a huge greater demon. You're not going to have that laying down. You're not going to get Horus with Sanguinius laying down as the first time you see Sanguinius, are you?
No. And I think it's fair to say that also there'll be logistical problems on how big that piece would then be, and then how that would also look because the pose he's in is a very combat-y pose, and you can tell that he's looking to spear something. And when he's on his own, he almost looks a little bit odd because he's sort of like attacking the ground, isn't he? He's going to nothing. But when you put the display base on, you can see the interaction. But then if you were to include a bigger demon, then it would probably make it even taller. It would be very tricky to see how that would work.
Could you imagine a £120 display base for Sanguinius?
Yes.
I mean, someone will probably do it when the model comes out, but it would be huge.
Yes,
and it would be.
I guarantee you there's going to be a few people that are going to go down that road and say, I'm going to do it this way, and this is what I'm going to do.
And people will have Sanguinius.
If you made it as a default and you said, right, this is his display base,
it's ridiculous.
You would have a lot of angry people saying, well, why should I have to display an extra 120 quid?
No one would buy it.
Display base.
No one would buy it. So I think
they'd sell about 3, wouldn't they? And then the rest of them would just be thrown away.
And the debacle of them, I think we talk about it with Michael later, the debacle of them selling Sanguinius and then the display base on the Friday, but the display base was only available on the Saturday, is, it's funny if you're not there wanting one. You were saying that there was someone who pretty much bought a ticket just to pick him up.
Yes, so I was at the front of the queue, and I have gone through this with you. I don't know if you want to go through it all again.
We'll do that later.
There was someone in the queue just a couple of people behind us, and we were sat there just looking at the guys behind the till because the queue was not moving. And this guy came up and said, "Oh, I want Sanguinius." And I said, "Oh, no, sorry, you have to come back tomorrow." And he went, "No, I've flown in to buy him tonight, and I'm flying back this evening to my home country, and I flew in specially to buy Sanguinius and his base." And you can see the look on panic on the face, like, what are we going to do now? Because you can't really say to someone, "Oh, well, it's fine, we'll just pre-order it for you," when they've bought a ticket, £75 ticket, and then flown in to buy one model and you haven't got him available. You've got to. I mean, it
is unfortunate as well, but it's a bit silly. But the fact that they've done a separate display base, I think, was the correct idea. Because
I think so as well.
Expense is, it's a big thing. But yeah, he looks fantastic. I know it's a joint effort amongst a few different guys. Sam did the main bit.
3 of them, yes. Simon did the body.
Yeah.
One guy did the demon.
And one guy did the wings.
And the wings. And then, what's his name? I forgot his name. The guy that does all the weapons. He did the swords and the spear.
All right, cool.
I can't remember his name. Is it Will Hayes?
Will, who normally does all the dreadnoughts and stuff.
Yeah, so he did the weapons. So yeah, combined effort. But I think a lot of them have been that way. They've been, done by multiple people. And apparently there was a decision made where they said they were just going to do the sword, but then there was a call. Well, what about the spear? And it was okay, we'll do the spear. It was like a little bit of a,
which is a surprise because they've never given in. Because Sam wanted Dawn to have 2 weapon poses. But this is the first time we've seen it done, and that's cool.
But I think that's what's good there is it shows that there is a lot of it. There's obviously a bit of thought going into it, and also it being sanguineous. I think that if they had just done the sword, there would have been a bit of an outcry. There would have been like, "Oh, where's the spear?" and all this sort of stuff. And I like the way Anush, and they've written the rules for him as well. Whereas he can have the sword, he can have the spear, he can have the sword, and throw the spear. There's a good bit of interplay there as well, so you can play him in different ways.
So there is one thing wrong with the model,
which is
well, if you look at his chest, did you look at his chest with all the red bits in the centre of his chest?
The red bits in the centre of his chest.
Okay, let me pause it while Neil looks.
Hold on.
Okay, so you're there, Neil. So
there.
the red gems, as it were, on his chest. Tell me what's wrong with them.
What's too many of them?
Well, they're eyes of Horus. They're not droplets of blood, are they?
I've always thought he had an Eyes of Horus on his chest.
It's one of those weird things, isn't it? Where
I seem to recall that there were pictures of that on him, but are they meant to be droplets? Oh, I see what you mean now. Looking at the other reference pictures,
because if he's in the middle of heresy wearing the mark of the Eye of Horus, I'm not sure he'd be fully welcomed onto Terra.
I see what you mean now. Yeah, because I've always when you said that, I went, oh no, that's what was always on there. But then thinking about it, looking at the reference pictures, no, they are blood droplets, aren't they?
So, but yeah, hey ho, it's a minor thing, but it's a fun thing. I'm not here to lambast people. Someone's, I think I saw Laurie Golding was like, if I was there, this would never have been allowed because he's a pedant. And I think maybe sometimes they do miss that little bit of, real kind of full-on oversight, which is not easy to do.
You know what? I'm not
being
funny. When you've got painters, and I know this from a lot of people that I know in the in the competition circuit, etc., will often say they don't know the background.
Yeah,
as
absolutely.
Well as
and that's
everyone. And I know Andy Wardle got pulled up a few times when he did his Gilliman. They were saying because he did his Gilliman's armor with all rough corrosion on the brass, and everyone said, well, he wouldn't have corrosion on his armor; it'd be pristine. And he was like, I don't care, man. It's all about how it looks, But there's an element. There is an element there where a painter will do something for artistic license.
Yeah, and you can't expect everyone to. No one knows every single detail of everything in the heresy. It's a very tongue-in-cheek put out. I think the paint job's fantastic. But yeah, and again, someone's okayed that model, so it's not like I'm lambasting the painter there. I think he's done a great job. Yeah, it just made me chuckle. But yes, moving on.
The more you say, more I think about it now, more I look at it, I think, oh, you're right.
It would look awkward, wouldn't it, if it was like that? I've come to save you. You're wearing the Eye of Horus. Are you sure? But yeah. So they showed off some models. We got some White Guards Praetors.
Yes, they are. Now, were they the ones done by? I think they're one of those. No, yeah, they were done by that new guy, Neil.
Oh right,
Roberts.
Yeah, cool. That Eagles.
Yes,
that Falcon's quite cool.
I mean, they are cool models.
The heads are cool.
Really.
Yeah, they are really good. I really like them. I know some people aren't, cataphracti armor for White Scars. It happens. The running White Scar could be used very easily for a number of legions. I like him a lot.
Definitely.
I think that looks fantastic, and the head on the cataphracti guy is fantastic. Could see him getting pulled off for other people as well. And we got dreadnoughts as well. What do you think of them?
Well, the dreadnoughts I thought were very, very cool. Now you've obviously got the White Scars dreadnoughts, which I know everyone was having a chuckle about, but then obviously they did explain that quite nicely.
Yeah.
And Noosh did a good piece on that, explaining about every legion has these at their disposal, and if they do appear in the battle, it's often ill-omened that they've turned up, because it must be that bad that they've come down to help, sort of thing. So they were very, very nice. And what I really liked about the White Scars bits, they've got a nice little theme running through them. They've got these coppery beaten parts of metal are attached in a lot of places. They look amazing, and that's on the speeder as well as the dreadnoughts and stuff. And then all the little details are really nice. It's
quite an interesting look. I like it on the Leviathan, the chest plate.
The Leviathan shows it off better, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think so as well. The Contemptor I'm not as big a fan of. I like elements of it. I'd have to look at it properly, I think, to make a full decision. But I think the Leviathan looks pretty cool, which is good. We got the drop pod out. Everyone's loving that. And we got a Blood Angels character as well, didn't we?
Yes, we did. We got
Raudal, trying to remember now. Yeah, he looks cool. I mean, he's some demon dude wiping that goo off his hand as well. I can see off his blade. I can see again those arms and sword being used elsewhere for diorama.
That's what I like
pieces.
about a lot of these sort of characters. They're very great. You can do so many conversions when you get these little character sets. It's really you can do that could easily be converted into a different legion if needs be.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, and there's a lot of bits there that can be used all kinds of places. Excellent. And then we actually talked about these couple of models a little while ago, because they were shown off as work in progresses last year. But we got the, the Castus Knight Asterius with what seems to be two mega conversion beamer death ray things and some Volkite.
Massive great big guns.
Problem is it makes me want one, and I shouldn't. I really shouldn't. But I mean, I do like it. I mean, you need to be playing. I suspect with those guns, you need to be playing big games for that to be legit.
Definitely, I can imagine them. I don't remember looking at the rules for them, but I'm sure they're going to be crazy.
And it looks really good painted up as well. And then the Ordinatus, what is it called? Mechanicum Ordinatus Actaeus, which is the big mole. Which again, you're going to need big games to be playing that. It's a ridiculous piece of resin, really, but I love it. I won't be getting one, but I love it. It's far too big for me. But they did show off a couple.
It's quite cool how it spins as well. The end. It sort of twists and spins. So we're talking about someone is bound to go and motorise it at some stage, and have it on the table spinning away.
That's what always happens. And they showed a few work in progresses. So we mentioned the land speeder for the White Scars, which is a White Scars.
That is specific. Really nice looking piece. I love that.
That real mobile kind of platform, which is really cool. And the White Scars specific Terminator unit, which look fantastic. There's so much dynamism. Yeah, I was about to say the dynamisms.
Great.
And the weapons just look fantastic with them as well. I mean, they're not.
Yes, it's that Neil Roberts guy, and each one he had a blow up of each one of these in his folder.
Oh, cool!
And each one of them, the pose is just like a really sort of although they're Terminators, they look one of some of the best Terminators I've seen because of the movement he's got in each one of them,
which is pretty amazing, as you say, in that kind of armor. To be able to do that is not easy. And then
as everyone knows, trying to convert one or try and make it, when you want to try and raise a leg up or something, they're very awkward because they don't have a lot of movement in the joints. But
and then
tip top.
And then we had a Blood Angels Dreadnought with a booster pack, which
probably my favourite model that they showed off. Actually,
immediately caused outrage that we can have a jetpack, jump pack Dreadnought. We don't quite like that. It can deep strike, or it can get a boost, or it can.
So you can either deep strike in, which is quite cool, or it can start on the board and effectively get a jump move, which I think.
Or you can reroll.
The claws on it look immense.
Yeah, so I think that's really cool. I think that's it's nice to have a combat contemptor that's going to be up in your grill properly up in your grill.
Well, yeah, definitely.
Without the need for all that. And that was like mainly the heresy stuff in terms of heresy. We had some Adeptus Titanicus, some of those tiles being shown off again, which are fantastic. Some additions to the scenery kits, which look lovely. Just a nice, real simple touch, but make the cities look a lot more realistic, effectively. And filled out. I'll probably end up spending some money on them. And the announcement of the Doom of Moloch. I was told that the next book involved lots of knights, so I guessed Moloch, but that's pretty awesome. There's going to be loads of knights, knight household rules, which is cool. And the fact they put a picture up and everything else means it's not a huge amount of time away. So it looks like they're going to try and keep Adeptus Titanicus moving at a fair pace, which is good. Not saying it will carry on at this pace. And then a load of weapons being shown off, which is good again, because they need to, like, the one thing they need to get out is more weapons for all the Titans, because it's getting to the point where you're looking elsewhere for them. Even I'm looking elsewhere for them because I want to play the games with the right toys.
Exactly. Yeah, those sort of things. Those little add-ons need to come out as quickly as possible, because it just stops the people sort of building what they want, how they want, doesn't it? Really. And it's
a little frustrating thing. And I know now they've done it. It's like they can't just rush them out, but at least we know they're coming and they're looking good. Which I think is really cool. So in terms of kind of what we saw, I think that's pretty much everything we saw at the Weekender that came through that's not Necromunda. And there's some really interesting Necromunda bits if you want to go and look for particularly some Psychers or some little bits and pieces, because they're bringing back out the old, whatchamacallit, was it Thatos? The possessed Psyker dude. He's coming back out, and the other two weird things. If you're playing around with some characters in there, they're really cool. But
it's another great place to go if you want conversion bits and
big time.
Especially if you're doing militia and stuff like that. I mean, it's a great source of how to make your militia army look a bit unique and have a special type of leader and stuff. And they're great sets to raid.
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of good stuff, and actually I think from the outside I was a little bit surprised with how much stuff. I don't know if my attitude was different from not being directly there, but it seemed like a healthy amount of information. Now, Book 8 wasn't there. I'll talk about it again with this Michael later, but they never told us it was going to be there. Now, I'm one of the culprits who, as I said, when they stated end of 2018, my assumption was that they've never hit a date, but they have been within a couple of months. Weekenders likely, and it became more and more likely, but they've been hit by something that they've got no control over. There's no point getting riled about it, there's lots of issues at the moment with customs, and let's face it, the boat journey from China has not been a smooth sail, if you excuse the pun. For the last few months they've had issues with that, which have probably affected stuff as well, but we're going to be getting it soon. It's going to be in hand soon, and the fact they offered the pre-release kind of, those first few are going to go out to the people who are at the Weekender is a good thing, and free shipping. So
it does help. I must admit that was my biggest frustration of the whole thing, because when that you dawned on you that you weren't going to get that on the Friday night, and then the Saturday panned out with the problems that were happening with how it has been organised. I must admit, at the start of the event, I was like, well, do you know what? I don't think I could even. Am I even going to be here till Sunday? Yeah. It was that, thinking, I don't know if I can handle this. This is driving me mad. But luckily, again, it's the Forge World guys and the designers and the people like Rudgy and people that that know how to sort of they're the people giving you the content. They're the people that then sort of win you back on side, because it make it exciting again, because you end up talking to them and you get information, and it just becomes much more enjoyable.
Right. Yeah. And we'll I think what we might do is take a break and then come and have a look. In fact, before we do that, we will take a break and come back and talk about that. But before we move on, they have announced, very close to your heart, they've announced the dates for Warhammer Fest. I booked my ticket, but it's for the Saturday. I'm not going up for Golden Demon.
Oh, really? I thought you were entering this year.
And I don't embarrass you, mate. And we obviously there's Golden Demon. It's been a bit of conjecture because it's the only Golden Demon. Well, it's one of a couple of Golden Demons. What are your thoughts on? Basically, they've pulled the number of whatever they're called. Yeah, they pulled them back a little bit, but added small scale for things like Adeptus Titanicus. And all that.
This effectively came out. I think they dropped an email yesterday about the basic releasing the information, which was quite. I thought that was not bad because we're still a way off May, so that was good that they dropped the information. And also, it was quite a detailed document as well. It wasn't just, okay, here the cat's bosh, done. It was a multi-page document trying to explain to you about the competition and answer a lot of questions. A lot of questions that a lot of people might already know the answers to, but they clarified lots and lots of items in there. So there wasn't any having to guess what you should be entering, etc., etc. But they have consolidated the categories down. We're looking at, there's not a Necromunda squad gang category and there's not a Blood Bowl team category, which I think is a sensible thing because they were always ones that were
less.
Let's say they
were for
they were for the opportunists. They were for the ones that people thinking, right, how can I try and hedge my bets here? If I go for that category, I could, there'll be less competition. So they've moved those into the relevant 40k squad or fantasy category, which I think is the right thing to do. Just
to jump in there, it also means that if more time comes out, if a new 40k game comes out, and in fact you only have to look at things that might be considered that aren't directly Age of Sigmar, so maybe this or 40k, like this new game's coming out for 40k that's arena combat. It encompasses anything they do in the future that is in the 40k setting. Yes. And so that means that they don't have to worry about any of this at all going forwards. Sorry, Karen.
Yeah, so obviously that does help with sort of how they align those categories, which makes it nice and clear. But I think they did the right thing by bringing a small scale category because effectively, if you put, say, a Titanicus model into vehicle, they are very different painting styles. If you're painting something on that tiny scale, it's not the same as painting it. We always, we spoke before about how a Dreadnought is very hard to compare to, say, a Titan when they're in the same category. If you then bring in Titans but on the Titanicus scale or, flips and chips and Fleet Gothic, this painting style is completely different. So trying to, weigh those up is very difficult. So I'm quite pleased they brought that in because I think that nicely defines what you're painting and where it slots in, if you know what I mean. So that, okay, if it's small scale, it's going into that one. If it's sort of the 28 mil, it's going into the other categories, and then it sort of slots into what genre it is and what type of unit it is, etc. So I think that's relatively quite clear now. It's just going to be interesting to see how competitive it's going to be come May, because it's now that the minis have sort of slipped away. Everyone's, again, it's like the old days where everyone's gunning for effectively one for the same spots once a year, or maybe it's twice a year technically if you include the the European one. But that is, it makes it tough.
Yeah, and
it makes it pretty hardcore.
Yeah, and then for the real hardcores, they can go and try and paint the Ideneth Deep King model for the heavy metal. Where you've only got that period of time again, which I kind of like in a way, but if you're not a quick painter, you're out of that immediately, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, luckily they did announce the model on is it the 40k open day?
Oh right,
the last Demon. They said they were going. So they had previously announced it.
Oh, right.
Because that's the day I bought my one. Because I said to one of the heavy metal painters, I said, "Look, I'm not hanging around for the ceremony. What's the model?" And he went, "Oh, well, it's meant to be a secret." I went, It's not a secret though, is it? It's not like, you're telling me some sort of really, really relevant secret. So he says, "Oh yes, this model." So I went off and bought mine. So I had that ready if I ever want to sort of knock that one out. But it's not my favourite model. I know a lot of people love it, but it's I I do like the way they do that category, because I find that it's a very purist painting category, because you're not being judged up against how good your conversion is or how good what model you've chosen and the movement of the piece and all that sort of stuff. It's literally purely painting. So I think it's going to be an interesting one, that one.
Yeah, that's cool. I wasn't sure about going to Fest this year, but because I missed out on the Weekender, I really felt I missed out on meeting up with everyone. And so it's like, okay, right, well, what's the next thing? And I suppose it's Fest. So, I'm looking to see who else is going, and maybe, because I don't think any of my mates are going from down here, so I'll be driving up by myself. So I need to see who else I can share the fuel costs with. But yeah, I thought, stuff it, let's grab a Saturday ticket. I'm not going to fight through the crowds to look at Golden Demon. And Saturday gives you a bit more time if you're doing that as well. So awesome. Okay, right. Well, I think we could probably leave the intro there, and we'll come back and we'll talk about your experiences at the Weekender. Okay, well, the Horus Heresy Weekender. You were up there as usual, as I'm not. I was not. That will do for that. So how we're going to try and break this down. We're going to talk about the overall kind of event and organisation at the end. But if we take the seminars, or how did you find the hotel? Just the hotel, like the food and things like that.
Yeah, the hotel I thought was a very decent hotel. The only thing I would say is it didn't have the coziness or the intimacy, I would say, as the Belfry did. Yeah. We were sort of penned into a tighter area, because obviously they had this side area that they had all the sort of the conference rooms in.
Yeah.
So it was good that everything was tightly packed, but it did mean that you didn't have that room to sort of spread out. You know how you sort of can, in the Belfry, you could just sort of wander from the bar and wander through the corridors to, over to the areas. But it felt in that degree not as intimate, not as sort of relaxed. But the hotel itself was absolutely brilliant. I thought the rooms were really nice.
So
the breakfast I thought was tip top. I thought it was better than the Belfry.
Cool.
And the food was all right. We only had the breakfast in the hotel. We went out to eat, which again was a bit weird, because there's nothing around that hotel, because it's literally on the airport. But fortunately, there is a harvester in basically a service station off the motorway.
Sure.
But we actually went into the nearest town and went for a curry on the Friday night, like I've done with my friends on all the previous weekenders, and we found an absolutely cracking curry house. So we went to that. That was really, really good, really reasonable as well. And we bought, because we knew that the hotel might be quite expensive on drinks. We brought drinks in, and had them in our room. So I think I got away probably spending less on food and drink this weekend than I had done all the previous ones, because we'd gone up on the Friday, went to Bugman's, the usual sort of going up to Bugman's, had some lunch. We'd had a curry out on the Friday night, and that was relatively cheap. The hotel, obviously the breakfast was included in the hotel. We bought some sandwiches and stuff to have with us, like, some ready-made ones, so we didn't have to buy lunch on the on that Saturday and Sunday. And we went to Harvester on the Saturday night. So food and drink-wise, we didn't spend a great deal amount of money. So the bar was perfectly good. It just didn't have that intimacy that the Belfry does. That's, I think, because it was sort of, because the Belfry is almost like a little bit spread out. You sort of have like lots of little areas with sofas in and little tables in areas, and you can sort of spread out and relax, whereas the areas that all the bits are in was all compact in one area. You couldn't sit down outside one of the seminar rooms. Yeah, Michael, it was like a corridor with everyone walking up and down. So
Michael talks about the same thing a little bit later on, that it's not quite that way. And this is a hotel at an airport. And, they're probably, I suggest, most of their seminars they hold are business type things as well. So there's probably less of a need for that, and certainly not having a big sales area. in the middle of the hotel. But it's good to know there are local options, and if you are going to a weekender and one of your group does drive, then it does give you a lot of options for reducing that price, and I think that's always a sensible thing to do. So let's jump into the weekender itself. Did you go to many seminars?
Yeah, so obviously when it obviously got made apparent that obviously this was a Necromunda and Horus Heresy weekender, that we'd all seen the lineup. Me and my friends sort of looked through and thought, well, what are we going to do? And we made it quite. I made it quite clear, and I think my friends were of the same opinion, that we were going to focus purely on the Heresy seminars. And the only Necromunda ones we actually ended up going to were ones that effectively were a fill-in, because we're like, I don't really fancy looking at how to paint traitors. I've done that that painting podcast, painting pod before. Really interested in that. Okay, well, let's sit through the new models for Necromunda or whatever. So we focused on the Heresy one. So the first thing we said was, okay, we'll go to the how to build a Heresy Legion or how to build a Heresy army. Which was, again, we sort of looked at each other and went, why are we doing this one? So we're just going to go to that one and start off. And this was the point where it felt as though it was going a bit downhill event-wise. So we went into that. And again, it was Anuj and Neil in that. And they did just, they just literally rescued it for me. And just literally went, right, who here has never built an army before? No one? Right. Who wants to talk about the new book? And then a massive cheer went up, and they got the book out and said, right, let's just start talking about the book. And we're fielding questions and talking about it. So that felt like my feeling that I get when I go to the weekender. That sort of in-depth, getting a bit of knowledge, finding out some real juicy information and it being excited about stuff that's coming and stuff that's happening. So that for me sort of helped me kick on the whole weekender. I felt a bit guilty though that we got into this tiny little room where you couldn't fit about 40 people, and we were the first to effectively get information about Book 8. And it almost thought, that's a bit bad, because if you couldn't make it in here and thought, oh, don't worry, it's only about building a new army, you effectively missed out on some really, really cool information.
Yeah, but they had a seminar on the book later on.
Yes. So effectively, that seminar that we were in at the start effectively happened 4 times throughout the weekender, because they had 2 forums on the book. One on either day, which obviously were people that really want to get to it. And also, when they then did the seminar of Book 8 and beyond, it effectively was the same thing all over again. So that's where it felt a little bit repetitive, because by the time we'd all gone to that one, so we're like, right, we really want to find out what's happening in Beyond. It was pretty much a rehash of those forums talking about Book 8. And then when they spoke about Beyond Book 8, it was about 5 minutes of, oh yeah, well, we're going to cover these campaigns, and no more information. So it was sort of, oh, right, so we haven't really got any more information than
it's far too
everything
far
we've
out
covered already in Book 8.
For them to give us information too much about the next book. But yeah, okay. That's cool. And that's a theme I think we saw. There was a bit of repetition through the seminars, which, we'll talk about later maybe. Anything?
Yeah, so I mean, from that, obviously I went to a few different ones. I went to the art one, which I always enjoy. I always enjoy seeing when they put up all the new pictures and they talk about them, etc. I always find those quite good. Then obviously I spent a little bit of time in the studio area, but again, they did that thing, the same thing they did last year, where effectively there was nothing new in the studio area until they'd shown off the new models seminar, and then new models came out, and then the following day some new models came out. But by that time, if you've walked around and spoken to a few people, it's sort of a bit hard to sort of go back round again. And I find that with a lot of these ones now, where you've spoken to the sculptors and you've asked them the questions, there's not a lot else you can really speak to them about. If you've asked the question and you've had it answered, there's not a lot else to talk to them about, really. So I find that I sort of end up sort of skimming through the cabinet, and then sort of, that's why I suppose I spoke to the new sculptor guy, because obviously I hadn't met him before, so having a chat to him was actually quite interesting. But other than that, I felt the studio area didn't really engage me that much this time round.
I suppose if there's a model sat out there that really drags you in, then you can get dragged in to talk about that model with those people. And that's a real first world problem. That's because you've been to every Heresy Weekender at the end of the day.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah. That's, and also, I'm quite surprised in some ways they don't repeat some of the seminars from. Do you remember the first Weekender they did? They did how did the Horus Heresy start and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
How did they? I'm surprised they've never repeated some of those.
I don't think they think about it. Well, if you look at it, what I'm doing with the authors for the recent episodes, and there will be a few more. The only other person I know who's looked back like that was Kenny Lull on Combat Phase when he did his 8-hour extravaganza. And part of my thought process was actually we haven't gone back to these old stories, and we found, it's amazing how 10 years loosens a few lips about little things that had gone on, and you can suddenly, the authors are saying stuff that they definitely wouldn't have said that 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago. So, and it's good because there are new people get into the hobby all the time. So yeah, maybe that's something they can look at moving forwards.
Yes, yeah, and I think that I did feel it was a bit light on content for the seminars I went to, and sometimes I feel that they rush through the slides a bit with them. Like when you get the new models one. I found that Tony, obviously, I do like it when Tony sort of compares so a lot of the seminars, but sometimes it can be pretty much a very, very rapid click through a PowerPoint presentation. New model, new model, new model, new model, and sometimes you don't get that sort of let's stop and talk about it, and let's sort of like talk to the designer. What were they thinking? What's this model about? What's the rules going to be with this model? So sometimes that can be a bit frustrating. That it's just like click, 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 click. But apart from that, it was. I felt as though this year I felt as though I did the least out of all the previous years, and with it not having a golden demon or anything attached, I was sort of a bit lost. I felt a bit lost at times, like, well, I don't really know what else I can really do. I've sort of, fortunately there were a fair few people there that I see, that you meet the same faces at events. So you end up talking to those people and, end up speaking to people that and you have a catch up with those. But if a lot of those people that I, often would see were, say, people that would paint for Golden Demon, they won't be there. So then it sort of like limits that element of it as well. So for me, it was real sort of questions asked. Well, I wonder what this will have to be like next year, and what would it have to be for me to actually want to buy a ticket for this next year? If you know what I mean? Like, what would be the thing that would draw me in? Because there wasn't enough, I don't think, content for me this year to warrant me thinking, right, that's it. As soon as those tickets come out, I'm definitely, be the first in the list to buy them.
Sure.
I'd definitely consider whether or not I wanted to go
next year. And the problem for Forge World is they sell a ticket for the event. They don't sell a ticket and hope you hang out with your friends. They should be providing an event that you want to be at. And I can't. We talk about this later with Michael. I can't see this ever going back to being a Horus Heresy only weekender. I don't think Black Library will have enough resources to commit because of not following the story on in the same manner. And Forge World are limited now by the fact that Warhammer Community, that they're on their controlled kind of release thing, so they can't show us anywhere near as much as they used to. So, which means they probably can't talk about as much as they used to. So those seminars have to be filled up with something else. Yeah, I think it's going to be a Horus Heresy and Necromunda, and if not something else as well, weekend moving forwards. Which is fine.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what it pans out to be.
Well, the important thing is that they sell the tickets saying that, and we can get into that. Were any more seminars stuck out?
Not particularly. Obviously, like I said, the art one was quite good.
Sure, that's fine.
I always quite enjoy that. The thing is, I don't. I mean, there was obviously a couple that were based more around Black Library-esque, but because I'm not fully up to date with everything, they don't really sort of engage me as much. Because I often think, well, I can't really sit there in a seminar about the new book they've written or a new story because I'm not up to date to understand what's really going on so much. So I sort of often steer clear of those a fair bit. But other than that, it did seem a bit light on. I know that in previous years, I've looked sometimes at the schedule and gone, oh, what am I going to do? I want to go to that. I also want to go to that, and thinking, oh, God, having to make some choices. But this time round, it was like, all right, I suppose I'll do that, and that then. Well, because it was a lot simpler to pick out anything that was left.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So arrived on Friday afternoon, evening at the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Do you want to tell us about your experiences? I'll try and get the bleep button ready.
Get the bleep button ready, yeah. So obviously the usual thing. Went up with friends Friday night. Got there about 3-4 o'clock. Checked into the room, and there's a fair few people, in the foyer at this point. Okay, yep. Had a little poke our heads round, saw where they're setting up the shop. Okay, cool. Got to the rooms. Got ourselves ready, came back down because obviously we've been told that on the thing that the shop would open at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
So came down at 5:15. A lot more people in and around the area, and they'd set up this set of desks right by the front door, and there was a very large blob of people by these desks. So obviously people are thinking along the lines of, this is where we'll need to do the registration, and that's where then we'll be able to go through and buy our stuff. But I happened to bump into a friend who's a previous demon sort of painter, and I said, "Oh, are you doing, Ryan? You all right?" He said, "Yep." I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Oh, right, well, I've spoken to someone, and they've said that the queue effectively for the shop starts here." And he's standing effectively near where the toilets are, going towards the corridor where all the seminars were.
Sure.
So I said, "Okay, well, if that's the case, we'll stay here with you." And waited, and it got to I think 5:15, and everyone's you can tell there's an air of tension building in the place as people are sort of getting well, when's it gonna, when can we start, when can we go and buy stuff? And the Forge World guy comes out and says, right, 15 minutes and we'll have the shop open. And we all turn around, and then this mob of people started swarming towards us. So we very quickly sort of tried to form an orderly queue and positioned ourselves effectively at the front of this queue. And it took until about 20 to 6 before effectively they opened the doors to the shop, as it were. But the way that obviously that had been delayed, there was this massive mob of people. We filtered through, effectively about 8 people away from the front of the queue. So we thought, fantastic, we're at the front, we'll be able to get what we need.
Yeah.
It then became evident that they didn't have everything available to buy. They were missing one of the Praetors. They obviously didn't have the base for Sanguinius, which we previously spoke about, obviously that being an issue. And obviously there were complaints flying about at this point. But the big problem they had was obviously the book wasn't available to buy, and they could pre-order it. So it was a case of fill out an order form for the book. So of course they're handing those out. They had 5 clipboards, and people are filling them out. Obviously it's taking a long time. And when they've set the tills up, one of the tills didn't work, so it was only in euros. So effectively they turned it off. So they had the one till working on the Forge World stand and the one till working in the Black Library. The Black Library couldn't take the pre-orders for the book, so effectively you had one till working. And with the fact that everyone was filling out these forms, it took us 40 minutes from the point at which they said we could start buying stuff to us actually purchasing our models and effectively pre-ordering the book. Now, bear in mind, we were only 8 people deep in that queue. We were like, wow, this is crazy. People are going to be here until midnight effectively waiting to get this. So obviously Sanguinius had been was out to buy, and of course there was a lot of hoo-ha about that and the base, etc. And obviously there was a lot of anger being thrown about with will there be enough bases? Have I got to queue up again tomorrow to buy a base? And I'm doing this tonight so I don't have to queue up tomorrow. This is the whole purpose of me coming tonight, was not to have to queue tomorrow.
That's it. I mean, people might have paid an extra 75 quid or whatever for a night at the hotel. Just to
effectively to pre-register, buy your stuff. Saturday comes, you roll straight into the seminars and get going, which we know is the way it works well. And that wasn't happening, and they couldn't give us our bags because they hadn't bought them over. So they couldn't pre-register us. They just gave us effectively a wallet for the ticket, which seemed, well, why bother doing that at all? Why not just say, well, you can't register tonight, it has to be tomorrow. So we finally got our stuff. And I remember walking back through this queue, looking at the queue through the hotel and going, oh my God, this queue must have over 100 people in it and maybe 150 people. And they're going to be here for hours, trying to get to the front and buy their stuff. And I remember walking past Miles and just going, yeah, Miles, sold out Sanguineous already. And the look of shock on his face was quite a picture. And that sort of length of queue. And I remember sitting down after we bought our stuff thinking, wow, thank God I haven't got to now queue up and all of that.
Yeah.
And there was a bit of relief, but also I felt a bit cheated that we hadn't sort of managed to get all the stuff we want, and it was a bit chaotic. But the real problem came the following day, when obviously we'd effectively gone there for breakfast, and me and my friends were in no rush. We bought our stuff. We're quite happy that we've pre-ordered the book. We've bought a couple of bits. We've bought the stuff we want. Let's go and have breakfast and start the event off. But we came down at, I think, 9 o'clock-ish, so relatively late breakfast, and I think it started at 10. And the queue, there's this massive, massive queue all the way through reception. I remember thinking, wow, this is pretty big queue for the start of the event. And I walked through the queue after seeing a few people I knew and said, oh, what's going on here? What's the deal? And they said, oh, we're just queuing for the shop. And I thought, okay, cool. People have come in today and they need to queue because they want to get Sanguineous, whatever. Yeah. So we went out after breakfast, didn't think nothing of it. And it came to about, I think, 10 to 10. And we finished our breakfast. And I said to my mates, well, let's walk round this queue. We're not queuing for the shop. Let's go and find out where we can effectively go into the seminars so we can get a seat. So we walked past the whole queue. And I said at the front of the queue, I said, what's everyone queuing for? They said, oh, we're queuing for the event. And I said, why? I said, there's no point to queue for the event because there's, effectively you're queuing for the opening ceremony, opening seminar ceremony thing. It's not really a prestigious thing. I thought, okay, that's a bit weird. So went to go and walk back. Effectively, I sit in the bar and wait for everyone to walk through this queue. And bumped into someone I knew. And then I said, oh, how you doing? Yeah, good chat. And they had wristbands on. And these wristbands they've been giving out to the people at the front of the queue. And I said, what are they for? He said, oh, they're so you can get in the seminars. And I said, well, where are they giving those out? He said, oh, they're giving them out to people in the front of the queue. I said, so you're telling me that you have to queue up early on Saturday to be able to go to the seminars you want to go to? And he said, well, yeah. That's how it's going to work. I said, but you've paid for a ticket to come to these seminars, not to come to the event, effectively, because it's an event that's lots and lots of seminars. So that sort of put me in a bit of a bad mood. And I remember talking to a few people thinking, well, this is ridiculous. But, if you've queued up, if you're waiting to get into, say, the new model seminar, and you're then turned away because you don't have a wristband, how is that fair against someone that's effectively just been at the front of a queue on a Saturday? So the whole wristband thing for me was a complete farce, because then later on in the day they're giving out wristbands to if you're in the queue and if you're not in the queue. So it was all a bit chaotic with the organisation. If you're going
to do a system like that, it needs to be communicated and needs to be better organised.
Yeah, exactly. It needs to be told up front. Well, we're going to be doing wristbands, because if you're at the back of that queue, you're never going to get one of those wristbands. And then if that then meant that you couldn't go to the seminars that you came to there to go and see, how is that fair? If you don't know,
but they doubled up every seminar. They doubled up every seminar, so there is a little bit of that. They've covered their rears in that respect, but it seems a little strange, shall we say?
It felt very odd, but then the whole wristband thing sort of fell apart because they weren't really policing any of that. But then the only thing that really frustrated me over the weekend was when it came to the sort of the Saturday, and you looked at the seminar list, and it was the Art of Heresy, What's New in Necromunda, and then New Model Seminar. And I said to my I said, well, we might as well sit through these three, because I want to go to the art one. I don't mind sitting through the Necromunda one because there's not a lot else to do, and I want to go to the New Models one. So I said, I'm quite happy to sit there for however long it takes. So we went through so we sat down, got really good seats, obviously, because you're going in to a seminar that's not massively populated. Sat down, got some good seats, sat through the first two seminars, and then sort of at the second seminar where they were talking about the art one, they said, right, just let you all know, at the end of this seminar, we're going to boot everyone out through the back door, and you've all got to queue up again so that you can get in for the new models one. Now, because at this point, that seminar was relatively full. Obviously, people are thinking, well, we'll just go in for that one and sit through. So I was like, well, this is a bit harsh, because by the time we get out, because we were right at the front and they were going to exit out the back, I said, we might not get back in again for the new models. So I said to my mates, I said, well, as soon as they do questions in the art and in the second one, we might as well up and walk out. I said, because the questions one never is that, the questions are never that interesting. So we'll up and out. So that's what we did. And we actually managed to end up, he walked out the door, walked to the front, said, where's the queue for this one? He said, there. We were at the very, very front of that queue. And then they booted everyone out of that seminar, but not properly. They let everyone exit out of doors. A mob of people came out, and then a mob of people went back in. So it turned into effectively a complete free-for-all, and there was no system to it. And I felt quite sorry for people that had exited out the back door, because once you've gone out that back door,
it's a long way.
It was then very hard to then try and get back in the front door. Yeah. And it just seemed a bit, I could see why they wanted to try and say, right, no, everyone out, because then we'll have everyone in who's queued up. But ultimately, it just seemed like a bit of a farce.
If you're doing
why
that,
not just say, right,
if you're doing
if
that,
you're doing it, just let people sit in there.
Well, it needs to be during a big break, so that people have nothing to do for a half hour, 45 minutes. It's the only way. Yes. People will still queue up, but some way.
Yes.
But fair enough. But yeah,
so for me, that was the biggest gripe. It felt like the organisation of it all was pretty weak. Like the events team, I think, don't seem to understand the Weekender, what it's about, how it works. The big thing for me that sort of spoke volumes was on the Sunday. Rudgy was there on a Sunday, so say hello to him, and there's a guy there with a permanent marker, and he's scrubbing out one of the seminars. Effectively, they swapped the seminar rooms around, so rather than the last sort of forum for the new book being in the small room, they put it into the big room, and it was a real sort of basic Necromunda seminar into the small room.
Sure.
And I was just walking up to Rudgy quite sort of sarcastically, because he was standing by an events team guy, and I just said, "Oh, that's what a good idea, Rudgy. Someone's had the good idea to put the most popular seminar in the biggest room and the least popular seminar in the small room." I went, "Who thought of that idea?" And Rudgy went, "Oh, that was me." I went, "Legend, Rudgy, well done, mate," and just sort of walked off, because it was that whole sort of understanding of people are here for the heresy mainly. And if you're going to have a really popular seminar, put it in the big room. Don't put it in the small room. And it's just little elements like that frustrate you, I think, sometimes when you're trying to go to these events.
Yeah. At the end of the talk with Michael, there's a little bit of an explanation that it's not quite as straightforward as just the events team running it, and maybe that things are changing there as well. But from what I'd heard in the build-up, even before getting there, you guys getting there was concerns, shall we say. Do you think the hotel worked for the event?
I would say yes. I think it did. However, I think the Belfry is a better venue for it, because it feels more personal. I think the way it was, the hotel itself worked absolutely fine. The breakfasts didn't run out of any food. They were excellent quality. There was the rooms were really good. The hotel staff were very good. All the facilities were fantastic. The only issue is that obviously with the Belfry, it felt more spread out, and it felt as though we had more ownership over like the whole hotel. That we had,
how about
the bar area, the sales area,
how about the position? How about the position of the sales stand at this hotel?
Do you know what? That didn't actually bother me that much. I know that obviously it was right by where all the events the seminars were happening. But ultimately, for me, when I go, I usually buy all my stuff on the Friday night, and then I'm done. I don't revisit them really. So that part didn't really affect me. However, the sales bit was a lot smaller than it had been in previous years in the Belfry. So they can't have had the same level of stock or the same amount of stuff, I would have thought. But how much of that do they sell? How much they bring and they have to take back?
Certainly.
I don't know.
Yeah, but it's one of those things. They need. They've got a high volume. They've got a high volume of traffic Friday night, Saturday morning, and then the rest of the time you only need a couple of people stood there.
Yes,
but it needs to be able to handle that high volume of traffic.
Yeah,
on
that was one of the problems. That's handling that high volume they struggled with.
Yeah.
And then I'm surprised, like in the previous years they've had the banners and stuff to buy, like art.
Yeah.
They didn't have any of that, but then at the end of the event, they were basically labelling up the event banners to buy.
Right.
But these were like proper sales banners, like pre-order, book 8 now. You could you can buy this poster for 40 quid. But I don't really want a poster that says buy this book.
No.
I could see that there was obviously the one of Sanguinius. Pre-order this model now. I can see someone buying that big blow up of the painted model. Yeah, fair enough. But they were trying to flog. It was like looking at some of them they were trying to flog. I was like, wow, yeah, some of these banners are just pure promotional banners. There's no like great thing that you think, I'm going to put that on my wall.
The wife will love that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's cool. Anything else you want to add?
No, not really.
Cool, that's fine.
It was. Again, I think you always can have fun at these events. You can always enjoy them. I just feel as though it was not near a patch on any of the ones at the Belfry. Personally,
you're enjoying it because
the Belfry was a better venue for it,
and you're enjoying it because of the company you're with.
Exactly that. Yeah.
To be fair,
if you took me away from that, I would have struggled.
To be fair, even when Forge World have run the Weekender and it was not as good as previously. The seminars generally are good if they've got a good compare, and talking to the modelers and painters is always good value. So that side of it, they don't have to work on a huge amount. They have to make sure they have a good compare in every seminar, and seminars should be structured and planned out and everything else. But if they can do that, the running of the event, once it gets going, it runs itself almost because the guys are good at what they do.
Indeed, yeah.
It's everything around it. Cool. So next year it's a very big maybe for you.
Well, yeah, that's the sad fact of it is that every other year I've said 100% next year tickets I will be going. This year it's a maybe. So that's a real, for me that's a big decrease because. For me, it'd always be a no-brainer. When the Weekender came up, I was going to it 100%.
Yeah.
Now, it's like, let's see how I feel nearer the time. Will I want to go? So it's going to be tricky.
See what the event is as well.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, let's face it, it might not even be. It might be the Specialist Games Weekender. But by the time it comes around next year, we just don't know.
Yeah, we just don't know. Cool, okay. I think we'll leave that there. We'll come back and close. We'll come back and talk to Michael. Joining me now, we have Michael. How are you doing, Michael?
I'm very well, thanks.
Excellent stuff. And we're going to, much like we do with Neil, we're going to review the Weekender. And I think it might be a slightly different style than I've heard elsewhere. Obviously, this year I couldn't make it. I missed my first Heresy Weekender. I watched it from a hospital bed, which sounds more dramatic than it was really. But it mainly involved stalking Twitter, hoping for updates and seeing if Warhammer Community were going to add anything to a post and sitting on a forum. But you were there, as usual. Indeed, and we'll mainly look from the Black Library side of things from you. Where do you want to start? What would be the best place to start with you from the Black Library side of Heresy?
Well, should we talk a bit about the books, the new titles that are available to buy?
Sure, yeah.
A big part of these events is the opportunity to get hold of things first. So, I mean, it always seems a little bit sort of mercenary. That maybe mercenary is not the right word, but to go to this thing just to buy something new. But it's exciting. It's good to get hold of stuff a bit further in advance. And this year there was some cool stuff. There was some some gaps that maybe we'd thought were going to be there, which weren't. But probably the two big titles that the Black Library's involvement at the event was built around were The Buried Dagger by James Swallow and the latest Primarch's book. So that's Angron, Slave of Nuceria. I don't know how you say that, by Ian St. Martin. So they were both available. So The Buried Dagger was there in the usual hardback format. Angron was there in its limited edition hardback. And they were, like I said, they were probably the releases that it was built upon because the seminars were focused very much on those two. And I think that's fair enough to a certain extent. The Buried Dagger is book 54 in the series and the final one in the series, so to speak, before the siege starts. So there was been a lot of hype around this one. It's been something that people have been looking forward to for a long time in terms of the Doom of the Death Guard aspect, and obviously just the final book before the siege. I mean, that's a pretty big deal, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And
so
I think it's worth mentioning just now. This was 3 and a bit weeks, over 3 weeks before it was released as well.
Yeah, that's right. So it's coming out. It comes out to order on the 23rd of February as part of the Black Library celebration. Yeah. So yeah, a good few weeks in advance. And that was great. So there was a huge pile of that there. I think it was pretty popular. Understandably, Jim was there to sign it. So that was pretty cool. And it's a good book. So nice to see that there. Angron, Ian was there as well, which was great. His first event, certainly the first Black Library event that I've seen Ian at. He lives over the other side of the Atlantic, so it's fair enough that he can't always make it across. It was nice to have him there, nice to hear him talk about it. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a bit more detail. And what's that, the 11th Primarch's book?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Something like that. So that was there in the usual £40 limited edition format, which looks really lovely, actually, I've got to say.
Yeah.
So those were probably the two main ones, and we knew about those. I think it had been confirmed on the community site that both of those were going to be there, and they had loads of copies, no problems whatsoever with those. So that was good. The other thing that was there, brand new, was an event-only anthology. So much like 2018's Heresy Weekender, where there'd been the release of Sons of the Emperor, Primarch's branded short story anthology. This was very similar. It was Scions of the Emperor, this time instead of Sons. And again, another Primarch's branded anthology, 8 short stories, available initially only at events or possibly at Warhammer World. No one seems to know if that is a thing or not. But certainly that was there at the Weekender. If they have any left, I imagine it'll be there at Warhammer Fest. But that was an interesting one because that sold out. And I think that sold out on the Saturday.
Right, blimey.
Which is not ideal.
No,
it's the sort of thing that you really want, everyone who's there, you really want to be able to get a copy of.
And I've seen stories of one eBay seller having 15 or so.
I didn't see anything myself, but I heard talk of bigger numbers than that being picked up.
I'm absolutely sure, yeah.
I mean, hand up, I popped back into the queue a few times to pick up books for other people. A few people had asked me to grab stuff.
Including me.
Including yourself. And I don't have a problem with that. I think the issue is someone turning up with, double figures, numbers of them in their arms and buying them all in one go, when perhaps not everyone who wanted one got the chance.
That's the key, I think.
Yeah.
That's the key, yeah. And it's something Black Library and Forge World and Games Workshop have kind of continued to do. They have in the past tried to put in a method which has been pretty paltry, to be fair. I mean, we've talked about it before. A simple token that you have to hand over to get the book would solve that issue. And then if you've got any left on the Sunday, then crack on. Anyone can come buy them. Would just mean that no one leaves that who wanted one who didn't manage to get one. And I think that should be a bare minimum, to be fair.
Yeah, I agree. Some way of enforcing a one per person, up until Sunday afternoon, something like that. Just seems fair. it also seems like a sensible thing to do from sort of a PR perspective. There's already a degree of negativity around the fact that it's only available at events. You would think the sensible thing to do would be to avoid any additional negativity of the people who are actually there.
Yes.
But interestingly, on that front, so 2018 Sons of the Emperor is due to be released in March this year. So says the back of this book. So it looks like it's going to be something in the region of a year between the book becoming available, each one of these becoming available at an event, and then becoming available widely on the website and so on and so forth. And that's cool. I'm glad that Sons of the Emperor is getting a full release. I don't quite understand why that isn't communicated publicly and upfront. If you're gonna do that, that's great. Put something out on Instagram or on the Facebook page or on the community site that says this book's brilliant. You're gonna want it. It's only available at events for a year. After a year, we're gonna make it available. So don't go off and buy them for £200 on eBay. Just be patient. Something, obviously, maybe not the flippant bit at the end, but something along those lines is just going to help manage expectations.
It allows people to actually work out their options as well, and particularly when gamers and collectors of books and people who enjoy books a lot tend to be on a collecting mindset anyway, and a fear of missing out and everything else. They know that's there, and again, it's something that GW as a whole has been pretty lax on. In terms of what they do communicate, those kind of things don't take much to put out, and they should be doing it.
Yeah, I agree. Especially as this year, the Black Library have an Instagram page now, and there was an Instagram post specifically about this book. I mean, I don't quite understand why you wouldn't just at least have some information about when everyone else will get it.
Unless they don't know, which, to be fair, sometimes I wouldn't put it past them that they don't actually know what they're doing. Well,
I guess it's possible, but even then, you'd have thought something along the lines of
it will be available. Yeah,
it will be available at some point in future.
Yeah.
But that notwithstanding, it's the same format as the standard editions of the rest of the Primarch's book. So just as it's very similar to Sons of the Emperor in that respect. So ever so slightly different because it's a sort of non-metallic gold on the spine rather than the actual gold. But I quite like that. It sets it apart from the main range. But it's a good book. It's a bit shorter than last year's anthology. Slightly different approach, perhaps, in terms of the style of the stories. Certainly slightly different in that the majority of the stories in this one are written by authors who you wouldn't associate with those characters.
Yeah, I've read all but a couple, and sometimes authors you wouldn't necessarily associate with the Heresy setting.
Absolutely, it's the first Darius Hink story we've seen in the Heresy. Darius covered Gulliman. For example, you saw Chris Raitt writing about the Lion, Guy Haley writing about Jagatai Khan. So it's an interesting balance. It's a slightly different perspective than we've seen before. My gut feeling, I've got a review about this if anyone wants a bit more detail on Track of Words, but my feeling is it's the sort of book where if you really just love the Heresy and you like little character studies and just seeing a different aspect of these characters, there's tons to enjoy in it. It's probably not what you'd call a must read or a must buy. There's nothing in there that really has an impact on the main narrative thread of the series. Jim Swallow's story is probably the closest to that. It does have a reference to the missing legions, for example. But there's nothing in here that anyone is going to miss out by not reading in terms of knowing what's coming later. The vast majority of them are little vignettes looking back in the past at how Primarchs sort of saw things or how they did stuff early on in their lives. So loads of interesting stuff. But and
it's not really the remit of the Primarchs series to do that anyway.
No,
but I understand what you mean.
Yeah, I think what the Primarchs novels can do really well is if we haven't had it in the main range series, is give the definitive story about that Primarch. So something like Perturabo by Guy. I mean, we've seen quite a lot of him, but it was his origin story, and it really did nail down who he was. And that's great. The novels can do that. The short stories, they're not about that. They're not trying to. They're just little character studies. And I love them, but probably not going to be for everyone.
No, absolutely. That's fair enough.
But those were the 3 main heresy titles that were available. There was a bunch of other titles there that had been released in the past. So there was all the novella series, the 10 of those, including the 2 heresy stories. So what are they, Dreadwing and Spear of Ultramar.
Yeah.
There was the usual back catalogue of the recent-ish heresy titles in their respective, whatever the most recent format is, so the hardback ones or the paperbacks, depending on if they've been released. But really, the main focus of the sales stand for BL was those 3 books, with a few of the bits and pieces for anyone else with money burning holes in their pockets.
Sure. And I think for some people, there was an expectation that we would see the Solar War.
Yeah, I think that really was sort of the elephant in the room. The fact that we know that the Solar War is coming out in March, even though it sort of disappeared from websites. I gather it was confirmed. I didn't hear it, but I gather it was confirmed that it is definitely coming in March. So we know it's coming. I mean, presumably it's been printed. For whatever reason, it wasn't there. It also wasn't mentioned in any of the seminars.
I did see a comment somewhere that basically said, well, we haven't even released the Buried Dagger yet, to jump ahead basically and have people reading the Solar War here before the Buried Dagger's released could be seen as not a great move. I don't know how true that is, but I did see a comment from someone, I cannot remember where it was, which is, I suppose, a logical way of looking at it, but bearing in mind release schedules. I don't know. But then again, I suppose if for people who aren't at the event, who maybe want the limited edition, they're going to say, good, you didn't get a chance to buy it before I did in the general mood of buying a limited edition. So,
I think that's fair enough, because there's always a degree of understandable disappointment from fans who can't make the events. And there's many, many people who can't go to them. And that's entirely fair enough. I'm not sure I personally agree with the whole, well, we think you should read this first approach. I think there have been events where multiple iterations or multiple books in a series have come out at the same time. I think you can trust fans to do what suits them. That's just my personal choice. For me, it was an elephant in the room. It was a bit of a glaring omission, and it was slightly disappointing. I would have really liked to have seen it there. I think, if nothing else, the Heresy Weekender is the business's Games Workshop's headline event for the Horus Heresy. There's one per year, and the Siege is the biggest thing that's happened in the Heresy since the first trilogy, arguably. And there was the one mention of the book of the Siege at all that I came across was a release of the map that's going to be in the limited edition, which, to be fair, looks awesome.
Yes.
But that was the one reference in the headline flagship event about this series. And it just felt weird. It felt like a missed opportunity. It felt as though there was a hole, there was a gap that wasn't really filled by anything else. There was no mention of that. There was no mention of the future of the Heresy. There wasn't a coming soon seminar for Black Library or anything along those lines, which there has always been at the Heresy Weekenders, at the BL Weekenders in the past. So I obviously don't know the decision-making behind it. There may very well be very good reasons for it that we're not privy to. As a fan, it felt like there was something missing, and it felt slightly disappointing, in my opinion.
And as you say, has that knock-on effect? If you're not talking about the Siege, then you're not having those extra authors at the event, which means when you look at the Black Library seminar list, the options that were available, it was limited.
It was. And I mean, we might as well move on to that now then, because at previous Heresy events, there's never been that many Black Library seminars, and that is entirely fine because the event is aimed first and foremost at hobbyists.
Yeah.
Great. So I am less of a hobbyist than I am a Black Library fan, so I always bear that in mind. You don't expect there to be dozens and dozens of BL-related sessions. This year there was a reasonable number, to be honest. Pretty much, well, most of the sessions, I've just got the schedule here in front of me, the vast majority of them, of the timings, there was a Black Library seminar going on. So arguably, maybe even more than usual, but there was a bit of duplication, which was interesting. So, like I said, so Jim and Ian, they both had their books there, The Buried Dagger and Angron, and each of them had 2 seminars, one on each day, about their book. And they were both pitched as slightly different. So, for example, Jim had The Fate of the Death Guard, which was very much talking about Mortarion and co. on the Saturday, and then on the Sunday there was a seminar called The Journey of Nathaniel Garrow. And Garrow plays a big part in The Buried Dagger, so it sort of makes sense to have seminars split out across the days about the 2 different arcs within that book, and giving someone who maybe couldn't attend the seminar on a Saturday the opportunity to go to one on the Sunday. So on the face of it, I think that's kind of fine, and understandable to a certain extent. The flip side of it is, for someone like me who is there primarily for BL, it feels like duplication.
Yeah.
So there were 2 Angron sessions, one of which was, well, they were basically called the same thing. One was Angron, Slave of Nuceria, and one was The Slave of Nuceria. I think from Ian's perspective, it's quite interesting because he's not normally at the events. And so it probably was good for people to have as many opportunities to go and talk to him and hear him talk as possible. Certainly one of those 2 that I went to was fascinating. It was really good. But trying to look at it objectively did feel a little bit like it was filling gaps. There was nothing about Necromunda. There's nothing about the future of the heresy or anything else regarding the heresy other than seminars about these books. There were those 4 seminars, 2 with Ian, 2 with Jim, and there were 2 seminars about the Scions of the Emperor book, with slightly different people in them. And so it did feel a little bit like 3 seminars doubled.
Yeah.
And maybe there is some justification around, we deliberately holding off on the siege and the future of the heresy. Maybe that's going to come at Black Library Live. But yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed all the seminars. Hand on heart, they were really good. But it did feel a little bit like, why are we having 2 of everything?
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, any more from the Black Library side of things?
Well, I mean, it's worth pointing out that, like I said, those seminars were really good.
Sure.
It's especially interesting to hear from Ian because, like I said, he hasn't been to too many of these before, or possibly any, I'm not sure. And he had some fascinating insights into the World Eaters and into Angron. And it's always great to listen to Jim talk because he's got such a wealth of experience about this. So tons of really interesting things in there. I was live tweeting them as much as I could. So if anyone is interested, I think rather than us going through it in detail here, maybe just go and have a look on my Twitter feed and you'll be able to find the transcript of those for as much of it as I could manage. There was not a lot in the way of juicy gossip about stuff coming up. There's a little bit about a couple of short stories, which as we record this, I think they're both going to be coming out in next week's week of short stories running up to the Black Library celebration.
Right.
So on the community site, it's been confirmed that there's going to be, I think 6, maybe miscounting. There's going to be short stories released in the week running up to that weekend of the celebration. And 2 of them are one's from Jim and one's from Ian. I think Jim's got a story called Lantern's Light, which is about Mortarion and how he got the lantern, the gun he has.
Yeah.
And Ian's one, if I remember rightly, is Angron's reaction to being whisked away from Nuceria.
Sure, yeah. Okay, that's interesting.
So they both sound good, and I much detail about them, but the authors, then talking about those stories was really interesting, and I'm very much looking forward to those too. The only other thing I think that came up, 2 things. One was that Jim is pitching for, or has pitched for, the Sanguinius novella, novel, the Primarch's novel. I gather that's not a done deal. It's not 100% set in stone, but he said he had a really good idea about it that's got the editors interested.
Cool. I
know there's been a lot of talk about who's going to be writing the Sanguinius one. We all want to read that because Sanguinius is cool. It sounds like, I think the thing to take away from this is it sounds like whoever writes it, it's going to be a way off yet.
Yes.
So don't expect to see that Sanguinius book anytime in the next few months. And then one last juicy little snippet, which did come out of one of Jim's Death Guard seminars. I don't know if you knew this, Greg, actually. I hadn't come across it. Originally, the plan had been to cover the whole Doom of the Death Guard arc in a graphic novel called Death Lord.
All right, cool.
So in the wake of McCragg's Honor, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
The plan had been to do another one. Probably the plan had been to do several. And certainly this story, I don't know the full details. It sounded like Jim had written it, or at least had a good structure for it. I mean, he knew how that was going to go. And so when it was decided that just wasn't going to work, which I think was probably because it just took so much time and effort.
Yeah.
Because they really went heavy on the artwork for the first one. So Black Library are not a comics graphic novel publisher, are they? They're a novels publisher. So possibly some...
Yeah, to fit it, to make it fit, Neil would have to do all the artwork.
Yeah.
Which would be a task, again.
It would. But it's slightly saddening, because I would have loved to have seen that. I think it would have been amazing. But the flip side of it is just it's interesting. And then Jim developed that. The story that he was going to tell in Death Lord was developed to be the Death Guard arc within the Buried Dagger. So if anyone hasn't found out, Buried Dagger covers Mortarion, Typhon, and co. as they become becalmed in the warp. We all know about through the background, plus also Garrow and the Knights Erranting on Terror.
Yes.
So the novel was obviously developed into that, which is kind of interesting. I think I'll always think, what if? Because it would have been awesome to have seen that as a graphic novel. But also I like the book, so it's just it's interesting stuff to know, sort of what might have been and how things came to be.
Yeah.
So that did come out of it. So as always, there's always loads of interesting stuff to cover in the seminars. This time there was a discussion around how much the authors really would like to write a sort of what if set of stories. What if Sanguinius hadn't been found on Baal, or what if Kurz hadn't been found on Nostromo? How might they have grown up? How might the heresy have developed, or would it have developed? And there was certainly a suggestion of, wouldn't it be awesome to do an anthology once the heresy's finished of these alternative takes? I gather, I'm not a comic book person, but I gather there have been similar things done in the big, probably Marvel or DC universes, where they've gone down this whole alternative history arc. This is by no means a suggestion that BL are actually going to do it, but it was quite an interesting discussion around how cool that could be.
Yes, sounds from my point of view, sounds like Black Library would steer away from that as a concept, as a confusing concept, but the concept itself would be interesting to see it tackled professionally.
Yeah, I think I agree. Actually, I think it's probably in the way that BL and GW operate, probably not that likely. No. But I'd pay for it. I would totally read that.
Yeah, it would be really interesting. That's cool. Yeah, and we'll talk about Buried Dagger at some point as well in the future, I'm sure. Lots of interesting stuff to come out of that book.
I think so. But really, those were the main points, without going into huge amounts of detail about each seminar. Those were the main things that I took away. Loads of interesting stuff. And worth going to from a Black Library perspective. The opportunity to pick up the cool books, the opportunity to listen to the authors and just get to hang out with them, absolutely worthwhile. So if anyone is thinking, is it going to be worth it for a Heresy weekend there? I think the question is, rather than am I going to enjoy the Black Library bits, which you are, the question is it worth the money of everything else that goes around it for a relatively few Black Library things, which are going to be great, but in and amongst all the rest of the stuff, which you may or may not enjoy. So if you are not interested in the hobby at all, probably not. Because, like I said, it's not that much of it is BL related. Yeah. If you are interested in the Forge World stuff, if you just like listening to them talk about the design processes and the background they're developing separately from BL for all the legions and all that sort of stuff, if you like talking to the artists and the sculptors and all that sort of thing, it's still great fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, cool. Excellent. So that's caught us up to date on that kind of thing now. Mm-hmm. There were interesting kind of things coming out from the Weekender. So being apart from it, getting this different view of what was going on. We changed hotel for the first time.
Indeed.
Gone down the road to the Radisson Blu at the Derby International Airport, whatever it is. I don't know.
Yeah, East Midlands.
That's the one. The hotel itself. Did they make any kind of claims as to why they went here? I mean, I've heard kind of unofficial claims that it was a better space, was what I was told. They would be able to do more of what they wanted to do. But I don't know how true that. I don't know if that's a real kind of I've heard rather than a statement. So
I don't know. The message I heard, which was just sort of through unofficial channels, so treat with a pinch of salt, was that the Belfry changed owners, and it sounds to me like there was a relationship issue.
Okay.
Again, I don't know that for certain.
I think we might find that out when we get around to the Black Library Weekender then.
Well,
potentially.
What I heard was that they're not going to be going back to the Belfry.
Sure.
So it sounds like the BL one will not be there. Whether or not it's going to be at the Radisson Blu, I don't know. I'm sure there are other possibilities. There's not just two hotels around Nottingham.
Absolutely not, yeah.
It sounds to me as though the decision has been made, or been made for them, that they have to move from the Belfry. And on the one hand, I think that's a shame, because I was very comfortable at the Belfry, and it was a really nice to have that sort of comforting element when you go to something like this, that you know exactly where everything is, how it's going to be.
Yeah, and the Belfry maintained an atmosphere.
It did.
For all there were faults there, while you were there enjoying yourself, you felt part of the club. You felt comfortable, and everything else in there.
Yeah, and I think that's probably where the Belfry differs from the Radisson Blu. Once you're inside a seminar room, it's much of a muchness.
Yeah.
They're not exactly luxurious spaces that you're going to want to spend time in. It's just a chair in a room with a load of people. But the difference then becomes things like atmosphere, things like service, that sort of stuff. From an atmosphere perspective, I think the Radisson didn't have as good an atmosphere as the Belfry did.
Sure.
You have to take that with the caveat of it's the first time it's ever been there.
Yeah.
Fine. I think the problem with the Radisson, from an atmosphere perspective, is that where the atmosphere really develops is in the bar and in the social spaces in between sessions and that sort of thing. And unlike the Belfry, where you essentially took over the whole hotel, and bits and pieces of it was spread out. You had the sales stand in the foyer, you had the bar, you had the walkways that you'd always get people sort of lingering and grouping together. You had the little weird outside courtyard space in the middle. And then you had the seminar rooms. The Radisson was basically the foyer, which is the bar, and then a corridor with seminar rooms coming off either side. And that corridor was always full because you had the sales stand in there. You had the paths off to each of the seminar rooms. You had the signing table at the end. And then there were various bits and pieces of people sort of lingering. There was a table where some of the Forge World folks were sat. So in that corridor, it was just a little bit of a case of I just need to get where I want to go because it's chaos. There's people everywhere. And then in the bar area, one of my friends who I was there with suggested that it felt a bit like an aircraft, like an airport lounge.
Yeah.
And I think that's a pretty good analogy. It was a big open space and, objectively nice, but it's the foyer. It doesn't have that enclosed sense of community and that,
sure,
and build up that excitement and that atmosphere. Of a Saturday night, it was packed full. Everyone was having a good time, but it was like you were in a generic bar somewhere, like in an airport lounge, rather than the Belfry at its best. It was all those people crammed into that relatively small bar, buzzing. There was excitement in there, and I think the Radisson lost that. The flip side of that, though, is the service, which was a million miles better than the Belfry. The Belfry really fell down, in my opinion, in things like the bar staff, the food. It was fine, but the bar staff were fairly rubbish. Most weekenders. I think one of the ones I went to recently, it was someone's first day, so you can't blame them. But bringing someone in for the first ever shift on an event day, maybe not the right choice. But you'd have slow service times, long waits, not that great food. Certainly the lunches that you'd get at the Belfry really was a brown paper bag packed lunch, and not great. The food at the Radisson was more expensive probably, but genuinely really nice. The staff were great. The bar staff were good. So it's probably a venue that's more used to dealing with this sort of thing. Delivered a better standard of service, but fell down in that sort of that sense of community, that sense of atmosphere.
Sure.
The rooms were nicer as well, though. Like it's a business hotel. It is what it is. Whereas the Belfry is a little bit different, because Belfry's that sort of wants to be a spa hotel. The Radisson, the rooms were lovely, well appointed.
And in fact, actually, that's a good point for some people. Was there a spa nearby? Because some people take their partners to the weekender.
There's a health centre of some sort. There was a swimming pool.
Right.
I must confess I'm not a health fanatic myself, so I didn't go and pay any attention. There was a swimming pool. I felt a little bit like at the Belfry. You often feel I felt a bit guilty because there'd be people there at the spa coming out in their dressing gowns, looking horrified, like absolutely baffled by what's going on. Didn't quite get that at the Radisson, but you did see people there who clearly weren't there for the event.
Sure.
Who looked arguably even more baffled. And certainly, when there's just 300 hobbyists, milling around in the foyer in the bar, it's taken over. You can't do anything else.
Yeah.
I guess it's going to be like that wherever you go.
But so for the odd person, having that spa there becomes a big deal. It certainly helped me out 1 year with the wife. But that makes a difference. And then the event itself, this was run again by the events team.
Yep.
They'd found out beforehand. How was the organisation of the event from your perspective?
The Friday night, Saturday morning, really quite bad. As the event went on, fine. Smooth. Once things came up to speed, really smooth, really well done. But the first impressions were just chaos. I got there quite early on the Friday and was just sitting around writing and was watching, and they were setting up for a really long time. I don't know the details, but the sales stand opened later than it was scheduled to. A queue had formed, no information, no one knew what was going on, didn't know why things weren't open yet, didn't know what to do in terms of registration. Were we going to get goodie bags? Like, what did we have to do with the tickets? No real communication with that. Eventually, after, I have no idea, but quite a long time of standing around, someone came around and handed out little plastic wallets for our tickets, but no lanyard, because the lanyard was going to be, we found out the lanyard was going to be in the goodie bag, which we weren't going to get until the Saturday morning. Fine, okay, so I don't really know why I've got this little thing. The queue took a really long time to go down for the main sales stand. It took me quite a long time to realise, or even actually be able to get round enough to spot that the Black Library sales stand was in its own separate room with a different queue.
Sure.
So eventually I just quit the main one because I wasn't buying any Forge World stuff and went and bought some stuff from Black Library. But there was no signage. No one was coming out with a loud voice saying, this is what you need to do if you want this. This is what you want to do if you need this. And really was kind of chaotic and felt to me as though someone had thought about lots of the other things but hadn't gone through and gone, well, what do we do when the queue starts?
Sure.
And the same thing on the Saturday morning. So there was no, there was what looked like a registration desk, but there was no one registering anyone there. So I came down a bit before the sales area was due to start and the open, and the first seminar was supposed to happen. And it was just chaos. I mean, I took a picture of it, and it was just 400 people milling around with no semblance of a queue. Absolutely no idea what was going on. There were some poor GW staff floating around through that. I saw one woman trying to hand out raffle tickets, which for some reason hadn't been included in the goodie bag. I saw some people eventually walking around handing out wristbands, and then there was a little stand where you could go and get the wristbands, but it wasn't very clear what they were for. It turned out they were for sort of priority access to seminars in the bigger of the seminar rooms. I'm not convinced they were ever actually used. Certainly, I never saw two queues for any of these rooms, any of these sessions, and it was a wristband for the biggest room rather than the little ones. So the little ones filled up and people couldn't get in. The big one I never saw full.
That happened, did it? Okay.
So,
yeah.
I mean, it felt really badly organised in that first impression stage. So, people who aren't going to turn up there on a Friday night, say, so plenty of people won't be staying in that hotel. They'll rock up on a Saturday morning. What you really want is a really clear sense of communication around what to do, where to go, how long it's going to take, that sort of thing. And there was none of that. But if that sounds really negative, I mean, it was kind of bad. But once everyone got in and things kicked off, it was fine. The seminar rooms, some of them filled up. It's fairly standard. But they ran pretty much on time. The ones I was in were at least reasonably well compared, if not excellently compared.
All right, that's good.
As usual, BL editorial were there, so I talked to Hannah, who's compared a bunch of them before, and she's really good. She was really well prepared. I think I saw Tony comparing one of them. Tony was his usual Tony self.
Yeah.
But you know that, I mean, he has a good handle on this sort of stuff. So, I mean, that was fine.
It's interesting. So I was sat at home Friday and I was getting messages from various people. And my thoughts immediately went back to 2 or 3 years ago when we had the Friday night, Saturday morning debacle. And there was a tension in the air that whole Friday night of, oh my word, what are we doing here? This is going to be awful. They've royally screwed this up. Was there any of that? There certainly was from other people. Did you notice any of that?
Absolutely.
All right. And that's not what you want. It's really not what you want.
It's not what you want. And for me, I was nervous going into the whole event because there'd been such poor communication up front. In my opinion, it's not acceptable to tell people when the seminars are starting or what the seminars are the Monday before an event which starts on a Friday, Saturday. Like, that is not enough time.
No.
It's not professional, especially when that schedule had typos and spelled people's names wrong.
Yeah.
And it spelled Tony Cottrell's name wrong, for goodness sake.
Yeah. And that's on top of the fact that they announced a Horus Heresy and Necromunda Weekender, put an announcement out to say, no, it will be a Horus Heresy Weekender months before the event. And then when we finally get there, throw Necromunda seminars and things in. Like, it's not necessarily a problem that's got Necromunda there, but when you're telling people you're not going to do that and then you do it, that's not good.
No, I think that's absolutely right. We've talked separately. I am, as I said before, I'm less of a gamer, more interested in BL. Personally, I like Necromunda. It's cool. I enjoyed talking to some of the artists and seeing some of the models. But I very much get that if you're a Heresy fan, if you're told it's Heresy only, you want to see everything there being Heresy. I think someone pointed out to me as well that if you're a Necromunda fan, there's a fair chance that you'd have gone, oh, it's not for me, this one. It's only Heresy, so I won't buy a ticket.
Absolutely.
And then you find out on the Monday that it is Necromunda. That would have been a kick in the teeth. So the whole comms around this, in my opinion, really quite bad. even down to when the seminar finally did land. And even the one I'm looking at here in the program, there's no information about what's in each of those seminars beyond the name.
Yeah.
So, for example, the Journey of Nathaniel Garrow. So, what's that?
Yeah.
Is it a Q&A? Is it like a lecture sort of thing? Is there going to be a reading?
Is it the future? Is it what he's been through? Yeah. Yeah. There's no concept of what you're really talking about.
No. So, a sentence for each of these, done. That's fixed. That's an hour's work. Tell people a little bit further in advance. If you're going to tell them something, stick to it. These are fairly basic problems for me. So I went in, I turned up on a Friday a bit nervous. I was quite glad I turned up early because I could just check out the hotel, make sure I knew everything was going to be, that sort of thing. Because again, we'd had no information. Then, once things kicked off, that queue, the fact that we were, a little while into the queue, we found out that there was no black book. That's not necessarily Forge World's fault. If it's still on the cargo ship, which it may or may not have been, I don't know. But again, some comms in advance would have been nice about that. They did it well. They came around with order forms saying, look, if it arrives on the Saturday or the Sunday, it's yours, you've got it. Otherwise, pay for it via this form and we'll ship it out to you for free. Handled fine. I think if they'd mishandled that bit, if it hadn't been there and there'd been one more issue, so the people, perhaps probably not just me, who were a bit nervous about the lack of comms, lack of organisation, the book not being there, I think if there'd been one more thing, it would have tipped over into unpleasantness, because there was just a sense of grumbling, a little bit of tension, a little bit of negativity. Fine, the sales stand opened, people could buy most of the things they wanted. There was a bit of gaming going on in one of the little rooms.
Yeah.
It was. It just felt a bit of much of a muchness evening.
And we'll talk with Neil a little bit, but things like being able to buy Sanguinius on a Friday night, but not being able to buy his extra base on the Friday night is like, if you've queued up to do that again, and then you've got to queue up another point in the morning. And of course, if you want it because you've got the model and you want it straight away, you're going to queue up early and be part of that queue, which is going to be bad on a Saturday morning, because as you said, all the people will turn up on a Saturday morning. Again, these things should be communicated front and centre if you're going to do it that way. Personally, I think they could have been handled a different way and it could have been there on the Friday night. But if you're going to open up on the Friday night, and I know Neil will explain that they had problems with one of their tills because it was only accepting euros, so they were down to one till, which is not ideal. But again, like, is there another way to get around that? The one thing about the weekend, and this is something I've learned from, as I say, I was sitting in a hospital bed having this coming, and from the outside, my word, does it sound like an absolute storm of rubbishness. And why would you ever go to a weekender? It's terrible. It's terrible. The key always for the weekender, and in fact, because over that weekend, I watched the Warhammer community articles and everything else. And I now have a greater appreciation of the people who are like, well, why would you ever go to a weekend? You can just find stuff out. Because from the outside, looking in through those portals, someone else can go and find out information. The key is the groups you're with, the atmosphere, meeting people, talking and all that. And that's the only thing that saved that weekender a few years ago on that Friday night, was the fact that we were all grumbling, but we were still there, able to, and particularly on a Friday night is the night you meet people you haven't seen for maybe a year at the last weekender. Yeah, exactly. So it does help a lot.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. It was weird for us being there. There must have been, because you don't get the context when you're not there. I can well imagine the sense of, oh God, I'm glad I'm not there. I'm glad I didn't pay for that.
I wouldn't go that far. I was in hospital.
Especially with like the till thing. I think personally, the sales area was in the wrong place. You had to walk past the sales area and the huge queue to be able to get to the main seminar room.
Right.
It is a corridor. I mean, to be fair, the only other place you could put it is in the foyer, taking up bar space. But I think in hindsight, it was the wrong place for it.
Sure.
It also meant that it was a one long table with tills at one end. So even with both of them going, it's still only 2 tills. And this is not something like maybe a Black Library one where people literally walk along and go, I'll have that, because it's all out on the table, and then flow through quickly. People are filling in order forms. People are asking questions.
Yeah.
The staff are having to go and look to the racks and find stuff.
Yeah, well, that bloke in front of you wants 4 different armour sets from 4 different things and 5 weapon sets, and it takes 10 minutes to find them. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So the simple fact is a long table with tills at one end is never going to work for that sort of sales stand. You're inevitably going to end up with problems. So I hope that they've been able to take it away and learn from that and do things better next time. Well, I think you're completely right that looking at it from the outside, it probably did feel like it was just awful. But as you said, what sets the weekends apart, what makes them worth going to, and what makes them different to other events is that community, is that opportunity to sit down and spend time with people, whether it's GW or BL staff, whether it's just your mates. And from my perspective, going in with those concerns that I had, and despite the Friday, Saturday chaos, I still enjoyed it for those elements. And you know what? Even though the community site do a really good job, you don't get everything.
Oh, not at all.
So you get the base level news, and that's cool. You don't get the deep discussions and the interesting questions because there isn't actually a roving community reporter there. They know what's going to be announced, and so they write it in advance. That's common sense. So you get the core things, but you don't get all the cool context and the depth.
Absolutely. And I say, sitting away from it, understanding that it sounded like one of the poorer weekenders, and there's been a couple of real poor weekenders. I still wanted to be there.
Yeah, that's
I suppose, and that shows you, I suppose, what the weekender is. It's not. Yeah. It's not the information you get and everything else. And we've said that, but it gave me a real understanding of that, which maybe I didn't fully appreciate in a way before that. What it does sound like, you're telling me if the sales stand is an issue where it is, if it's then pulled into the foyer where the bar is and that causes an issue, then sounds like they've got the wrong hotel. And it may be that it was the only hotel they could grab at the time. We don't know. We don't know the ins and outs, but I would hope that Forge World or events or whoever's organising it moving forwards, and we've spoken briefly. I can't see this ever being a heresy only weekender again. No. I think with Black Library getting to the end point, it's never been a huge Black Library event, but it has got slightly smaller in the Black Library representation. I don't think, and the way that Forge World have to release information now with Warhammer Community as part of that, as the way they want to do it, I don't think Forge World can provide enough information. I think we're always going to have something attached to it, and it'll probably be Necromunda. And I think, so my personal opinion is Tony likes the way they're joined together. I think we're moving forwards like that. So fingers crossed next year, if they're going to keep the same kind of thing, that they've got enough time to find a place where we can have the seminar rooms, have enough space for a well set up sales area which doesn't impinge on everything else, and have a bar area. And it won't be perfect. Nothing, the chances of it being perfect are very slim, but they're in a very good area. And in terms of Derby's only just up the road, if they're already going down to East Midlands Airport, if they can't find a place in Nottingham, there's got to be a place in Derby.
Surely.
It's close enough. So
there must be somewhere. And you know what? It might work having the sales stand in the foyer. You might say at the Belfry, like, oh, how's that going to work? But actually, they took over the entire foyer.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's possible that is a solution. It definitely felt to me like it was a problem, but an understandable problem from that perspective, in as much as they've never held an event there.
I must admit that I can't say too much, but I'd heard some grumblings before the event.
there was a chap wandering around on the Saturday night, I think, and the Sunday called Brian from GW. I don't know his surname. Really lovely bloke who, what it sounds like is that he's inherited the running of this event with about 2 weeks to spare.
Sure.
So, I mean, he couldn't have fixed any of those problems because, you know, if you're addressing them with only 2 weeks left, it's too late. You can't worry about that. But he was going around asking people what they thought. You know, the closing ceremony, he specifically said, "Get in touch with us. We want to know what you think." You know, he said, if you don't want to put it in an email, drop us a line and we'll try and find a time to call you.
Oh, right. Wow.
You know, this is stuff that I've never seen Games Workshop do before. I don't know exactly his role. I think he's maybe looking after the community team or events through the community team. It sounds like that's where it's going. It's going community. Although I'm making some assumptions there. But he seemed really on board, really positive and wanting to make changes and make things as good as they can be. So I think the thing to do, if anyone either was there or just has thoughts about it for future ones, is do what we're doing. Talk about it. Write about it on your blog. Add it on a Facebook page. Put it on a forum somewhere. Email the community team. Keep up conversations, but keep them up with the view of trying to find solutions rather than just grumbling about stuff. And it sounds to me like for the first time ever, they're actually soliciting these sort of opinions and they want to find solutions.
Yeah, and that's right. For a flagship event, for £75 ticket price, they should be, and hotel costs and all that. You're right. Actually, it was from what I understand, it was an events/community. It's kind of a combined thing that ran the event. And that'll be interesting moving forwards to see if they're taking over these kind of things. But yeah, if you've been, feedback, and we've always said that, and feedback direct to GW. You're right, you can write blogs and things like that. Going onto Facebook and talking about it on our podcast chat, generally is not going to reach the right people because they're not going to go in and pull stuff. It does. Stuff gets picked up, but it's a very ineffective way of doing it. You want to be emailing GW directly. Yeah. But yes, cool.
But I would just say that there were definitely some issues with this year's, and arguably I would say that some of these issues were very similar to previous Heresy ones that they have not learned from. However, putting all those issues aside, I defy anyone who is genuinely interested in this stuff. In the hobby as a whole, to go to something like this and not enjoy yourself, because there's always someone to talk to. Even if you sit through a couple of seminars and you go, these aren't for me, just go and hang out and talk to the Forge World team, because they're great. They're so enthusiastic, so positive, so knowledgeable. Whatever you're interested in, there's something to enjoy. I think the key thing to do is not go in with hyper-specific expectations.
Yeah.
If you're only interested in one thing, if all you want to do is find out the rules for Sanguinius or enter a painting competition and you're not interested in anything else, I mean, inevitably you're going to be disappointed at any of these events. If you like the broad sweep of stuff, I think you're always going to find something fun, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's a cool event. It really is. And as most things in the community, it's cool because of the community that do it. And you're not going to get on with everyone there, but I guarantee you'll find someone you will get on with,
Yeah.
And as you're right, both Forge World and, I don't think I've met a member of the Black Library kind of team, or certainly authors, who I haven't found to be a thoroughly nice person.
No.
I had which is great.
Total blast chatting to some of the authors on the Saturday night. Just super friendly people, and it really is. It's worth it for that sort of stuff. Whether you, like you said, whether you're hanging out with mates that you met up with last year, or getting to talk to these guys, there's a ton to enjoy from that. Problems, yeah, for sure. I really hope they address those for next year.
And they need to.
It's interesting as well that a fair few of these problems aren't problems with the Black Library Weekender.
Yes,
the advance comms. We talked last time, and I think you were right that. BL1, it would have been nice if they'd announced it or put tickets on sale a little earlier, give people more time to book. But what they did was they as soon as they did go on sale, they gave all the information.
Yeah.
Every guest who is going to be there, huge range of stuff that's going to be available to buy, seminar listings with details of what every seminar is, the timings for the signing sessions, all that sort of stuff. I mean, these things are hard to organise, so they'll have had that nailed down for months, you'd think, certainly for weeks. So, yeah, I feel like whoever organises these things can learn from each other, can learn from other conferences and that sort of stuff that happen elsewhere. If it were me, if I were running an event like that, I would go to as many conferences as possible and write down all the stuff that breaks, all the stuff that doesn't work, because no one's ever been to a conference that's perfect. Absolutely. There's always problems.
Yeah.
And just, plan for this. Yeah. Plan for the worst so that you can deliver something really good.
Yeah.
Because if you compare the audience at something like a Games Workshop event to any other conference or event, pretty much anywhere that in any sector that isn't just like fandom, you've got a positive audience. You've got people who want to be there. They're not going for work purposes. So you've got built-in positivity. Shouldn't be that hard to tap into that.
No, absolutely. And I will bang on about getting tickets out earlier forever, because I absolutely don't think it's going to change. I think it's the way they go about the system. In fact, we've only just had Warhammer Fest tickets announced and released, and they must have known Warhammer Fest was set in for a long period of time. I honestly don't believe that's going to change, but it still won't make me stop thinking it's a silly idea.
No.
But yeah, I mean, this new team, all they have to do is look at Black Library to start with and say, when you run your events, right? Just how do you go about this? How do you go about that? Because I'm sure Black Library, as you say, nothing ever goes 100% right. But when you put out that information beforehand and do everything they do, then it gives them that credit, and you're like, okay, cool, that went wrong, no worries. I can look at this and go, okay, I can't do that. I'll go and do that. Fingers crossed for next year.
Fingers crossed. And I think all you have to do is look at the fact that we're talking about this. People talk about this all the time because the fans want to go to these events, and we want the events to be really good.
Yeah.
Everyone wants that to be the case. And even if you can't make it, you still want the events to have loads of cool stuff. And I'm sure there will be a load of Black Library fans who didn't go to this event who were disappointed that there wasn't more news revealed around the heresy, for Black Library. So I don't think it's hard to identify what people want, whether they're going to it or not.
No.
The tricky bit is delivering it, obviously.
Yeah. And again, if they announced the tickets with, with what was happening, then there's no expectation of more.
No.
The Black Book is, it was supposed to be there. They've had this problem with shipping and things like that, but they never ever told us it was going to be there.
No.
I'm one of the people who, as soon as they announced the date as end of 2018, I was like, right, weekend of 2019 sounds about right then. And as a community, we've gone, right, weekend of 2019. And you know what? Most of the time we would have actually been right, but we can't blame Forgeron for not having it there when they've never told us they're going to have it there.
No.
But when you look at the Siege of Terror, it almost feels a bit different in that it's only a month away. Like, when have you not had a book on pre-release that's only a month away?
Yeah, exactly.
That feels a bit funny, but whatever. It is what it is, I suppose.
Absolutely. And I enjoyed the event despite the problems therein. I think we'd talked before. Right up until the BL weekend, I was saying I'm not going to go to the 2019 Heresy one.
Yeah.
And then I'm pretty sure there was talk at the BL one about how we'd find out more at this event about the siege.
Yeah, I think there might
and it
have
was,
been.
and I'm pretty sure that's why I went, I have to go because I'm going to have such FOMO if I don't see that. Again, I'm slightly on the fence. I think, as you say, BL's involvement in these events is going to decrease because they'll have less to talk about.
Yeah.
We'll see for future years. It's got me hyped for Black Library Live. and for the BL weekend of this year, basically because I know how good they can be.
Yeah.
And this has sort of tempted me. I've got a taste of it, and now I just want I want the proper event. I want something that BL have run because I think they do a better job.
Yeah.
And arguably, like, problem solved. That's what GW want people to go away from this excited about the stuff that's coming next. And I think probably most people did go away excited about that. There was a little bit of talk about the next Black Book.
Yeah.
Cool. People are already thinking about the next one, even though 8 isn't in people's hands yet. That's a success. People went away talking about all the cool new Necromunda and Adeptus Titanicus models. Great. So I think probably it will be seen as a success internally, albeit with some strong caveats of we need to fix this for future events.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. I think that's probably a good place to leave it then.
Cool.
Awesome. Cheers for joining us, Michael.
Pleasure as always.
We'll be on again soon.
See you soon.
And that's it. A much delayed episode of The Imperial Truth. Thank you for bearing with us, and thank you for listening through to a delayed Weekender episode as well. Hopefully only a couple of days later than it would have been anyway, but we shall see. Before we go anywhere, I have finally put version 1. It's far from complete, but most of the details are there. Version 1 of the event pack for the Reckoning of Delan Prime, which is taking place in Cardiff at Firestorm Games over Bank Holiday weekend in August. And it's an Age of Darkness gaming event, which means there are multiple ways to play the game. If you want to go and find the pack, you can go to theimperialtruth.com and click at the top right, The Reckoning of Delan Prime, and it's all there, or find it on Facebook. And there's an event. There's an event on Facebook as well, so you can go and find all the information there if you want. All the details for how to buy tickets are all in the pack, doing it a bit differently, but trying to keep track of some information that is required for the running of the event and just my sanity as well, trying to get organised for once. So hopefully we'll see some of you there, because Cardiff's great. Absolutely love it.
Cardiff is fabulous.
It is fabulous. If you've got, before we go, we did have a tournament, a competition a while ago to win a limited edition copy of Vulcan, the Primarch's book. And as usual, I think partly because it's a book as well, but partly because it's an email in contest, there were very few entries. And the winner, as chosen by Neil as a random number generator, should I say, is Mr. Aaron Tunney. So I will send you an email and we'll fire off the book. I'm not going to go into the hopes because it's all a bit out of date now. So unfortunately, due to things happening, it's all a bit past. So we'll move on from that. But congratulations, Aaron. I will make sure that gets out to you. If you like the show, if you want to help the show, go and tell your friends about it. It's the easiest way. Or leave a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you listen to the show. We do have a Patreon. If you feel that we deserve anything at all, then you can go and give $1 or as much as you want to us at Patreon as a show of thanks for making the show. You don't have to, but a warm thank you to all our Patreon supporters. And you can find the show on Facebook and Twitter. Neil, you're on Instagram mainly, and we might see some little bits from you as you progress your painting, maybe?
Yes, Neil Paints on Instagram and everywhere else. I've been recently, every time I put something up on Instagram, I've just been sharing it on Facebook and Twitter automatically, just to try and keep everything up to date, really.
Good man. And I'm at Child Fang. Who knows when there'll be some heresy progress. We shall see. I've got plenty going on at the moment, trying to catch up with life and all the fun that I'm missing in the real world by being off work sick. So it's all good. It's all good. What can you do? But it's all part of life, and it could be a lot worse. We haven't had an author interview this week. I am lining a couple of, again, I'm sure you can appreciate life got in the way. I actually messaged someone as well, and they've talked about maybe some of them are very busy for starters. I've had a number of, I've got like 2 books to finish in next 3 weeks. Can we talk later? So there's a few more. Some are very hard to get hold of. So I don't know how many more in the series there will be, and I don't know how regular they'll be, but I will keep trying to track some of them down. But it's surprisingly hard with some of them that you would think would be available, but aren't. And that's fair enough. They've got a lot of stuff going on, and some of them work very, very, very long hours doing what they do. So hopefully for those who've enjoyed that, we will have some more, but it might be a bit sporadic. But if you've got any ideas, if you've got any requests for anything to do in the show like that, obviously that one came out the top of my head, and that was actually a decent idea for once. But if you've got any ideas or things you want to know about, feel free to email into either of us on the show, Greg at the Imperial Truth or Neil at the Imperial Truth, and we can go from there. But I think, frankly, because I'm really struggling now, it's amazing how much better you can feel until you've sat in a chair recording a podcast for a few hours to realise that you're still a long way off where you need to be, as my throat is showing. So have you got anything to add, Neil?
Nothing from me.
Awesome. You have been listening to The Imperial Truth.